do is I'll just wander and leave this recording video, and then there's kind of walk, and later on I find the frame. I grab it. It's a different way to think about video, where it's not video for filmmakers, it's video for photographer purposes.
Yeah, you're thinking about it.
Yeah.
So what are
I think it's $8.99. I think this one actually is right now discounted to $8.99. This is on top of the line, so this is like $1,700 plus the cost of the lens. I think this is $600 with the kit lens, not this one. $5, and I think this is like $750. Well, they're different types of cameras, and Sony's got like 3 different lines of cameras. So, yeah, they're comparable. I like the menu system more. I think most people like the menu system, and any camera more than Sony. That's one thing that Sony makes a great sensor, and all these have Sony sensors. Yeah. We won't say that when we're streaming this live, but they all have Sony sensors. It's cheaper just to buy the sensor than to try to back all. And on the flip side, a lot of the Sonys have Panasonic batteries. Teslas have Panasonic batteries. You know, the Gigafactory is the Panasonic factory. Okay. Yeah, so eventually they'll make their own batteries, but that's how it goes. It's like an iPhone's got parts from it. That's how it is. So, okay. Yeah, it's just it's a camera style, but it's their flavor of camera. Sony's flavor of their camera. So. You know, the image quality is going to be very similar unless you're looking at the full frame Sony sensors. Then low light you have advantages, but you have disadvantages as far as operational speed, video quality, that kind of thing. So you know, it's hard to buy a bad camera. You have to really, you would have to really put a lot of effort into buying a bad camera. That makes it difficult finding the right fit for you. So, you bet. All right, man. You want to start? Is it? It is.
Terrible. You gonna introduce us?
Okay. Welcome to City. Is everyone signed in on this paper? Anyone that hasn't? Cool. What's that? No, my watch. I have a. My watch is not. Julio Florio and Florida Joseph out this evening from Panasonic. This is, as you are all aware, I think, was an add-on meeting for this month. These are the kind of meetings we get to add on occasionally from the National PAC Association. So being part of that national organization, there's some cool stuff that we'll get occasionally, and this is one of them. If we're able to get one of the slots in Saturday's photo wash, that's another one with the Olympus guys in town. And interesting because he's in town at other camera dealers, but he's only on the photo walk for us. Again, that's part of the national PAC. So occasionally you'll see these guys, this type of speaker at the main meeting for the month. Other times we just get an offer, and do you guys have to go on tour? Nick called me and said, hey, they're going to be in your area. You want them to speak? I said, sure. Make it work. So here we are. Thank you all for coming out. And without further ado, I'm going to turn it over. Thank you. Thanks for coming, everybody.
So the whole thing that we're doing here is this thing called the Lumix Shoot Anything Tour.
What? No, just like,
yeah. We are. We've been driving from LA all the way up to here, stopping along the way, doing these shows at a bunch of retail stores and a couple other places. Been having a good old time doing it. And the whole idea behind the Shoot Anything Tour is we want to show that you can, in fact, shoot anything with these cameras. So before we get into the meat of it, let's just do a quick little self-introduction here.
So that's me. I'm Julio Shorio. I shoot professionally full-time. I have been for 10 years, which is pretty awesome. I'm very proud of that. It's been a very interesting business to be an artist because it's the first thing to get cut and the last thing to get put back on. But I have found through separating myself visually and by adding other elements in photography that my business has been growing strong even when the economy dug down. So pretty proud of that. If you want to find me online, that's how you find me. If you can spell it, you'll find me, and if you can't, you will not. Pretty simple at that, and I'll
So mine's a little bit easier to spell because my last name's impossible, so we just do Photo Joseph and leave it at that. So that's me everywhere. I'm also a professional photographer. I live in Ashland, Oregon. I have a studio down there. I do mostly commercial and portraiture work. That's the bread and butter of my business, but I also do a lot of everything because it's the industry. You got to do pretty much everything you can. And I live in a small town, so what people want, I shoot. Yeah. And you'll see a lot of these samples of that kind of stuff coming by in our show today. So first, let's just answer the question of why Lumix. There's obviously a lot of different camera manufacturers out there, a lot of different types of cameras. Why are we shooting with these guys? Julio, why?
Oh, cool. Mainly, if I were to boil it down, I shoot with them because it's more fun. For me to be able to do an assignment, and I do assignments with something this size, it's more fun. If I'm having more fun shooting, I'm going to shoot more. If I'm shooting more, at the end of the day, I'm a better photographer. That's really it in a nutshell. I could talk about it for hours, and I do online, but if you're shooting more and you're carrying less, you're going to create more.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I'm trying to simplify it. Otherwise, that'll be like.
Seriously, you could go on for like half an hour just on this part. Another big advantage of these, the fun is absolutely a huge part of it. It is the size and weight. This is the largest camera that of the Lumix line, the GH4. This is the biggest, beefiest camera that you can have. Compare this to a Canon 1DX Mark X or whatever they're called. Big. They're huge. They're way heavier. This lens on here right now, that is a equivalent of a 70 to 200 2.8 lens. If you've seen that lens on a Canon or Nikon, you know that this is really small. So when you have gear that is this small and light, you can do more with it. You can carry more gear if that's what you need to do. You don't have to see your chiropractor as often. Sorry if any of you are chiropractors.
No additional cost.
There's just the sheer size and weight of it is a phenomenal part of it. But that's just the beginning of it, and you're going to see a lot more answers to this question throughout the presentation. So, quick little shout out, thank you to our sponsors. Ignore this part. We have a few little giveaways, but this was an add-on part of the tour, so we didn't get all of the extras to give away at this event, I'm sorry to tell you. But, just quick little shout out.
The reason, we came here because we really wanted to do this event for PAC. This was typically Panasonic only sponsored events for dealers. I know Nick from Phoenix. I lived in Phoenix for years, and so I was like, we kind of work something out with Panasonic so we can actually present here. So we'll not be giving away a LX100, but it is a pretty awesome camera.
Just a quick mention of what this is. This is not the newest, but it's one of the newest cameras, and this is what we would call a point-and-shoot camera for professional photographers. It's an incredibly powerful camera. It's got a 24 to 70 odd zoom lens in it. f1.7, it shoots 4K video. This thing is incredible, and Julio shoots assignments with this little camera. That's the one he held there. Unbelievable little piece of kit. Another sponsor that we had is Think Tank Photo. Think Tank makes all kinds of camera bags, but specifically, they're one of the few that's making bags for the mirrorless market. So smaller, more compact bags, and it's not just about the size of the bag, it's about the size of the pockets in there. You can carry smaller lenses nicely protected instead of having to stack 2 or 3 of them into one camera hole and still have to stuff your socks in there to keep them from bouncing around. Tether tools, these guys make gear for shooting tethering specifically. If you shoot tethered in the studio, they have these little wired clips. Here's a good easy one to see here that keep the tension off of your camera so the wires don't bend and pull out. And they also make this great stand. You see it here, and we're actually using one right here. So if you are presenting or if you are shooting tethered in the studio and you want to have your laptop next to your camera, you can rig all that together. Really, really cool stuff. So tether tools, if you're shooting in the studio, be sure to check these guys out. And then this is why we have to go back to LA by Thursday night. They gave us one of these and they want it back. It's a lovely, lovely, lovely Mercedes. And they want it back. Sorry. But we're not giving that away either, so. What's that?
Not too far to Canada.
Right, not just across the border. Okay, so what are we going to talk about in the Shoot Anything tour?
A lot.
A lot. So we're going to talk really, really fast. I haven't even drank my coffee yet. But here's what we're going to cover. We're going to cover hybrid, landscape, travel, street, low light, macro, portrait, commercial, studio, and sports. All in about 3.5 minutes, right? Is that
like an auctioneer?
Yeah. Like an auctioneer. Let's get this started. Julie's going to kick it off with a bit of hybrid. I'm going to kill the lights now.
Oh, thanks. So who here has heard of hybrid photography? A few people. Okay, cool. So hybrid photography is the blending of still and video, what I call motion and sound, but the difference between a filmmaking and hybrid is created with the eye of a photographer, and the soul of the image is rooted in photography. So I got into hybrid. I pioneered this concept that we're calling hybrid now in 2009. I just wanted 6 Addies for assignment work, and I thought, man, my rest of my year is set. And actually it was not. I didn't work for 6 months. So when you don't work for 6 months, you really, you got to decide, okay, am I going to stay in business? Am I going to do something else? And if I'm going to stay in business, what am I going to do to offer my clients something that they can't get anywhere else? So some people say, well, I'm going to expand my studio and get a bank loan and go bigger, bigger, bigger and do all this stuff. And I decided, after not working for that long, that it wouldn't be wise to throw more money at an empty pit. That's kind of how I saw it. So I got into shooting video, but I got into shooting video with my photographer's eye. Short clips, parts of my photos that move, and some more static with what we call cinemagraphs now, and then short form video that's designed for like YouTube 30-second or 45-second clips. I had found that shooting this stuff with a DSLR is very difficult to do because most DSLRs you don't have any autofocus with video, and it's a different animal when you go from still to video. It's like 2 cameras in one, but that's what we had, and that's what I shot most of my stuff with. But now with these cameras, one of the things I love is that you have a live view. So it kind of mimics your smartphone. You have, whoop, look at that. You have a live view. I've not dropped one of these yet. By the way, just want to mention that. So you have a live view in your camera. What you see is what you get. There's no guessing. Kind of like an iPhone. Autofocus works the same in video as it does in stills, and some of these cameras will do what's called 4K video. So are you guys familiar with what makes a video clip? Okay, well, I'm going to tell you anyways. It's easy, isn't it? As soon as I can shrink my interface here. There you go, look at that. So there are 2 main types of video that we're talking about today, HD or 4K. So high definition video looks really good on the screen. I'm going to mute this here. This was shot with the GH4, standard high def. You can see that there's a lot of jagged edges here on the hairs. It looks like video. It's not the highest resolution projector, but just
everything was
kind of like make pretend. But it looks fairly jagged. It doesn't necessarily look like a photograph. It looks like video. And when you're delivering a video on YouTube or your iPhone or wherever it ends up, in HD, it's totally fine. It's okay. But shooting in HD, every frame of video is 2 megapixels. So if you were to open up one of these files, an MOV or an MP4, that's called a wrapper. And a wrapper, like a Snickers bar, wraps the nougat and all the good stuff, but not like Dr. Dre. Okay, the wrapper. So if you were to open up an MOV or an MP4, inside that wrapper, you're going to see a couple things: a series of still images, JPEGs. In HD, those are 2 megapixels each, and then you're going to have an audio track, which is what the cameras capture on the onboard mics, or if a microphone is connected. So you get 2 types of media. And when you're combining that together, it's why we call it hybrid media. In fact, the GH cameras, the H stands for hybrid. So if you're shooting 2 megapixels for each frame of video, while it may look okay on the screen, if you were to do anything like access the JPEGs inside that wrapper and pull a JPEG out to make a print, it's not going to look good, right? I mean, who here is using a 2 megapixel camera for their main camera? Anyone? No one's brave like that. I'm not, because 2 megapixels for still photos really kind of stinks, and we're way past that. You know, when you try to have such a small file and you're trying to manipulate it, the file breaks down, it's not sharp. You can maybe get a business card size printout of it if you're lucky. That's what you're getting with full HD video, is 2 megapixels per frame of video. So while it's good to deliver an image of video at 2 megapixels, capturing with it really limits you. Now here is an image shot in 4K. Now you can see immediately that it has more of the look, more of the soul of a photograph. The colors looks more realistic. And this is, I shot this at the same exact time. There's more shadow. I'm able to do things like show more shadow depth of field. There's, well, not in this projector, but imagine if you will, there's less jaggeds in the hair. It looks like an actual photograph because inside of the wrapper, every frame of that video is over 8 megapixels. That's a huge jump. When I started shooting full-time in 2005, I was shooting magazine covers with a 5 megapixel DSLR. I never got any pushback, because that's really all you need is about 5 to 8 megapixels to make magazine covers. And now you got that in every frame of your video, plus you get audio as well, which allows you to do things like start to consider what your photography would actually sound like. So if you're doing any kind of wildlife, what does that animal sound like? What's the sound of the streams, or what's the sound of the water, or babies? I mean, it really just like expands the possibilities of photography. And one thing we can do with this hybrid content is we play it back, you find something exactly that you like, and then in Lightroom, you hit this little cog here, and then hit this little square here, and you can capture a frame. So I'm going to capture a frame. I'm going to pull a copy of that JPEG out of the wrapper. I'm going to do the same with this one, so we get an idea. Oh, it's a pretty shot. There you go. Capture that frame. And now let's compare the two so we can see the difference. So as they are here, there's not a whole lot of difference, because if you're delivering for HD, it's okay, but it's when you want to really dig into your file, and you can see how much more detail you have. Now you can see, and actually you can see I missed a little focus here, but you can see that there's a tremendous amount more detail in this than in that. And because I'm shooting 4K video, like this frame here is a little blurred, I can slowly scrub the video and find the exact frame that I want. And it comes in handy for a ton of things. Like if you're shooting a model in a studio and you have this great idea. We're going to shoot a model in the studio, we're going to drop a balloon filled with paint on her head. So you have a couple options, right? You can shoot with the motor drive and hope you get it. And if you don't, then you got to start everything over, come back in a few hours, maybe never, maybe not see her again. Or you could get it right by just shooting some video and then picking the frame that you want. So let's play back this video. One more time. So now, we're going to quickly find the exact frame. Oh, there were some good ones there, wasn't it? Boom, paint mohawk, paint hat, and we'll do, let's see what else we got. Oh, a paint sombrero. Maybe a little bit too much, but you can see, whoops. You can see, yeah, I mean, even here you can see a lot of the detail. So let's take a look. So now we have some choices. Look at that, that's pretty sharp. Actually, there we go, that's pretty sharp. And we got that one, and we got that one. What I'll do is, I'll not keep that one. And we got two winners here that we can use. And then from here, you can use whatever file editing program you're using. It could be Lightroom, Aperture, or Photoshop, and you can go in and you can do whatever you want to the image. I mean, it's a pretty well shot image. And we can add some contrast, whatever. But you treat it just like you would your photograph, because it is a photograph, because video is photography, yes.
Are you using the 4K photo mode to do that?
This was shot, yeah. Now, just so you know, I did not shoot this. This is one that was done by a photographer in Germany, but it's such a good idea. I got the file from it. But yeah, this is the 4K photo mode. So real quick, he's asking about a mode called 4K photo. And the GH4, the FZ1000, and the LX100 have a 4K photo mode, which is specifically 4K for photographers. So while there's, I think, one or two other camera companies that do 4K video internally, I think it's mainly Samsung, they don't do a 4K photo mode. So what is 4K photo? So 4K photo allows you to play back the video like I just showed you, right? And in camera, you can find the exact frame that you want. You can pull that frame out in the back of the camera. That frame of video stores all the metadata that your camera is recording. You don't get that in Lightroom. So you can find the exact image. It's also shooting at a higher shutter speed, so you're going to get less motion blur. Most cameras, when you shoot video, they're going to do shutter speed around 30th or 60th of a second. And if you ever try to shoot anything that moves quick, what happens is, of course, it gets kind of blurred. Now, sometimes you may want to get a blurred image. You may want to use that for creative effect, but if you're trying to freeze action, you just can't do that. So that is 4K photo mode. It also allows you, the 4K photo mode, and this is the coolest thing I think for me, is to shoot multi-aspect ratios with 4K photo. So you can shoot 4K photos at square format. You can shoot them at 16 by 9, 4/3, 3:2, and those are photographer-friendly formats that we've all been using forever. I, in particular, am a big fan of square format. So that's basically 2K versus 4K. I want to show you briefly a couple pieces. Actually, I'll just show you where it is shoot. So, a couple things. If you go online, you're going to read that you gotta avoid the forums online. I'll tell you straight up. Most of the forums online, everyone's an expert, and the moment you put something up there that you're being vulnerable, you want to share your image, and here comes the trolls, and right? They'll come running down the hill, and you suck, and you're not good, and it's the trolls, man. Steer clear. And a lot of the trolls online, they're gonna talk about things that you have to. If you don't do this, you can't shoot 4K, and it's all a bunch of crap, man. I'll tell you straight up. They're going to tell you that you have to have a top-of-the-line high-end computer. You do not. You have to have a computer that has a solid-state drive. It really helps because your drive speed is going to allow you to load that 30 frames of 8 megapixels per second and play it fairly smooth. That really helps. You don't have to have a beefy computer. In this video I'm going to show you, though, I actually edited on my iPad Air with iMovie while hanging out on the couch with my cats as an experiment. So I pulled the 4K videos in and I exported as a 1080p because I wanted to see that just on YouTube. But then I have the 4K photos I can pull from that. Did you have a question?
Yeah, I wanted to ask about the drives. Can you do okay with a Thunderbolt?
Yeah.
If you don't have an SSD?
That's a great question. So she's asking, can you use a Thunderbolt drive that is not a solid state? You can. Drives vary. Okay, this one here, this LaCie Thunderbolt, I actually picked up on the way here. Because it's rugged, and because of when I had it dropped, it wasn't rugged. It doesn't work anymore. And this is a normal drive that's Thunderbolt, and it works out pretty good. The solid-state drive is going to be a little faster. I think these are roughly 270 megabytes per second, and the solid-state's like 400 and something, so it's almost double. So what that basically means is that if you start adding a lot of video effects and color and stuff to your video, the solid-state drive will give you a slight edge in performance over standard drive like that. But the stuff I'm going to show you here, I did the majority of the work in the camera. So when we're shooting JPEG, right? And so when you shoot JPEG, what you see is what you get is what you get. It's not a whole lot of stuff that you can do afterwards. It's kind of limited. Both these cameras, because you got a live view, you basically create your image in camera. You see it live, and then you record it. And so that really, once you get used to doing that, you spend a lot less time in post-production trying to color correction and stuff. If it looks good on camera while you're recording it live, then it looks good. And if you trust your creative vision and want color, black and white or sepia or whatever, you can build your looks in camera, then you get exactly what you want most of the time. Does that answer your question? I know it's a long answer, but let me show you real quick this video. Again, I had shot this on the GH4 from some of those clips that I really saw, and I edited this on my iPad. I'm going to hand it over to Joseph. The only effects that I have in here is that split prism, and I just downloaded an app on the iTunes App Store, and I did that. I think it's called Generate, it's like $2. But all of this work, the vignettes, the slow motion, the color effects, that is all done in camera, so I didn't have to do that afterwards. Because when you have the camera set to black and white, you see it in black and white. When you have it set to like sepia tone, you see it in sepia tone. You don't have to like shoot it and then wait until later to see it. You're getting it live. You're seeing your work before you actually capture it, which is amazing. So that was all done on my iPad, and it took me an hour or so to do. By experimenting, this is my first time.
Alrighty, so this is going to be the most odd transition. And you don't have to stop the slideshow, just Command Tab out. He's not the techie guy. This is going to be the oddest transition of the bunch. We're going to go from hybrid, where you're shooting video and you're doing all the effects in camera, to landscape, which is completely the opposite. It has bugs. Software is not buggy. Just the air. Landscape, where everything is done post, meaning out of the camera, in the computer afterwards, and nothing moves at all. So, I know. It's crazy. Madness, I say, madness. So here's what we got. The reason that I'm showing you is, I'm going to show you a series of pretty pictures. The reason that I'm shooting these on this particular camera, the GH4, is because this camera has the most dynamic range out of all the cameras in the bunch. This is the, even though these all have the same size sensor in them, this one will capture the most data, give you the broadest range of colors, the best depth, and everything else that you need to make really, really kind of expanded files in Photoshop afterwards. So the GH4 is what shot all these pictures that I'm about to show you. And what I'm going to do is just show you the pretty pictures first, and then we're going to break apart a couple of them and show you kind of what went into these. So, Sparks Lake. Oh, actually, let me, before I even go through that, yeah, anybody ever shot a landscape? Right. Anybody here ever gone into 500px and looked at landscapes there? Anybody felt like selling their cameras after that? Yeah, that's me, right? I am not a landscape photographer at all. I thought, hey, landscape, take a picture, and then you realize what other people are doing, and you go, I don't know anything. But I recently started learning something really interesting about landscape photography, other than the fact that you have to know everything about light and sun and clouds and all that good stuff. But there's a lot that goes into post-processing, and that's the crazy stuff you see on 500px, and that's what I'm going to show you, just a little tip of the iceberg up here. So, Sparks Lake in Oregon, near Bend. By the way, the colors in here do not represent the colors on this screen, so sorry, it's just kind of not the greatest projector. Also Sparks Lake, slightly less color, slightly colder. That is sunrise at a dry lake bed. There's a lake theme going on here in Ashland, in my hometown. Fortunately, now there's water in that. These are fall leaves near Ashland as well. Crazy bright red fall leaves. Most of these colors, this is the image that has been retouched the least, if you can believe that. Those colors are like 90% what was there when I shot it. And then this one here, this is the one I'm going to really break down for you. This is again that dry lake bed. But this particular shot, as you're about to see when it was originally shot, was almost monochromatic. There was almost no color in there at all. But the magic of this isn't that I added a bunch of color to it. It's that I pulled the color that was in there out of the file, and that's what the GH4 file is all about, having this incredibly rich source file that you can actually do this stuff to. So I'm going to very quickly show you this picture, and then I'm going to jump over to that green one and break it down a bit more. What I want to show you here is that the screen's really low resolution. Let me change this. Get little icons on here so you can actually see things. Oh, here we go. That's how the image started. That was the original source file, and then through the magic of Photoshop and not by painting in colors, that came out of it. Okay, you're not impressed. Let's go on to the next one.
I'm impressed.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, dear. Somebody's impressed. All right, let's do this one. This one, I'm going to break it down and show you step by step what happened. So there's the original file. Very monochromatic. There's color there. You can see the green. You can see kind of yellows. There's probably something in the sky, but it's not jumping off the screen at you. And this is largely what it looked like when I stood there and made the picture. And you're looking at something like this and you're thinking, okay, I know there's color. I can see the color, but it's just not oomph. It's not really popping out at me. But if I know what I'm doing, I can probably pull that color out of there. And that's what this process is. Now, have any of you heard of something called luminosity masks? Okay, a couple of you. You know, luminosity masking is not for the faint of heart. This is not beginner stuff. I'm like 10% into learning how to do these things. And even just with that, it's incredible what you can do. I can't wait to get back and spend more time learning these because it really is awesome. But I don't want to go into a huge thing on what luminosity masks are right now. You can Google it, look that up. If you go to my website that is newly renamed, photoapps.expert, the second post down, I think, is about luminosity masks. You can get a little taste of it there. But anyway, here's what happens. So I start off with the base layer and then add saturation into just the yellows, and they're painted just into the middle. So watch this band across there. I'll toggle that on and off. You can probably kind of barely see a change in there. And a lot of these changes are really subtle, but they build up over time, and that's the key to this. And then you add some curves in the sky, and that's a bit more dramatic, so we pull that out. And then we add some brightness and contrast over the whole thing, and so that really adds quite a bit of pop to it. You can even see that up there pretty well. And then this is a really cool one. Here we're adding curves into what's called the ultra darks, the darkest parts of the image, and this is where luminosity masks really shine. See this area down here? It's super dark in there. That's the ultra darks. The area that we're going to affect is just that right there. So this is a luminosity mask. We're only affecting that part of it there. And if I turn this back on, you can see as I toggle that on and off how we're able to bring up the brightness in there. But it's very, very restricted. It's just that part of the scene. Add a little contrast into the overall dark, so the darkest parts of the image again, more contrast. And then saturation on the green channel, isolated just to the green. So you go from that to that, just through these luminosity masks, saturation, contrast, and so on. So we're not adding color, we're not painting color, we're not making something up that wasn't there. We're just pulling it out, and you need a good quality file to do that with. You can't do that from a JPEG, right? You have to have that source file as a raw file, something really pure, lots of data in it to extract that out, and that's what you can do with it. So there's that part of it. We're going to cut that there and jump on to the next topic, which is travel. So again, completely random. We're jumping all over the place here. These cameras are great for travel photography. One of the #1 reasons, the first thing I mentioned, in the wide lumens part, is the size of these, right? They're really small, really lightweight. It makes it easy to carry it around all day long if you're out traveling somewhere. But let's just say that I've got this camera. Again, this is the GH4, the biggest one. And I'm out traveling somewhere cool, and I'm trying to be kind of sly about the pictures that I'm taking here. Let's just kind of blend in. Do you blend in when you're doing this? This isn't blending, is it? This is not blending. Even though this is a small camera, this is still not blending. So a much better way to blend is to get the camera off of your face and a little bit more like waist level. And the best camera for me, for traveling, is this little guy right here. So this is the GX7. So it's a bit smaller, not massively smaller, but it's a bit smaller than the GH4. But here's why I love this camera so much for travel. The pop-out LCD, it goes straight out and up like that. So that means I can now shoot at waist level like this. Now the GH4 does that, but the LCD here works a bit different. Let's set this up. So here's the LCD closed. It opens up like that. I can flip it around so it looks like a normal, rear-facing LCD. But if I want to go waist level, I'm working like this. So now it's actually a wider profile. So it's an even bigger camera than it was before. Which if you're in the studio, this is fine. That's great. On a tripod, set it down like that, you're doing good. The nice thing about this is you can flip it forward into the forward mode. And this is not for doing selfies. There's a different camera for that. This is primarily designed because if you're using this in the studio, put this on a tripod, and you're over here setting up your set, you can look back and look at the LCD to make sure that things are where they're supposed to be. Right? That's way better than running back and forth to the camera, look to the viewfinder, back to the set. This is incredible. But going back to the travel thing, if you're working with a camera like this, you got that little flip-out LCD, you can keep it nice down at waist level. The GX7 also has a pop-up or flip-up viewfinder, so you can do this. If you really like the viewfinder, but you still don't want the thing in front of your face, you can do that on there. So both work out really well. The LCD also flips down, so you can overhead crowd shots like that.
GX7.
This is the GX7, correct. So that's, for me, travel camera, this thing is awesome. It's got a good balance of buttons and power compared to the even smaller cameras. It's not as big, obviously, as the GH4, but it's a really nice sized kit to take out. So let me just show you some travel pictures, which will hit on one more point, and then we're going to move on to the next topic here. So actually 2 points we're going to make about travel pictures with these. So Julia talked about doing your image editing in camera, pre-processing, setting up your effects in the camera before you even shoot. So this is obviously black and white, crop square, kind of grainy, high contrast. This is a look that I've dialed into the camera because that's the look that I want for these pictures. But if you only shoot JPEG and this is all you get, and you change your mind later and think, oh, I really wish I'd shot in color, right? If you're only shooting JPEG, that's gone. But if you're shooting RAW plus JPEG, you get the best of both worlds. You get this you get this JPEG look, you get this image that has the black and white crop square, but you also have that RAW file that's pure color that you can do whatever you want with. This is great for a lot of reasons. When I'm traveling, I'm on vacation, I don't want to sit down at the computer, spend a bunch of time messing with the photos. I just want to take my pictures and share them. Put them up online, share them out with my friends, put them on Facebook, whatever I'm going to do. But even if we get away from the vacation thing, even if you're shooting for a client, you're shooting professionally, would you rather be done when you push the button and be able to deliver that file to the client, or would you rather sit down in Photoshop for hours messing around with them? If you can develop the look that the client wants in camera, show the client on the back of the camera, do you like this? Do you like the way this looks? Yeah, and you a little bit lower contrast, a little bit, okay, we'll change that. You can do it in here and have a file that they're ready with. And then if they change their mind, say, you know, I really wish you would shot that all in color. It's okay, I did. I've got that. But if they like it, if they like what you shot, if you like what you shot, you're done. And for my money, I'd much rather be done. I'd rather be out shooting than screwing around with the computer, which I know is hard to believe after I showed you the last pictures, but it's true. So there's that part of it. Last thing in here I want to show is this picture here, specifically to point out that this picture was shot with this camera, the GX7, but not with a Panasonic lens. And this is one of the other really cool things about the Lumix lineup. It's micro four thirds, it's a universal or an open format. A lot of manufacturers make lenses for these cameras. This was shot with an Olympus lens, a little 45mm f1.8 lens, I think. It's really tiny. I didn't actually bring it with me. But it's really tiny, really sharp. It's a great little long travel lens. But I even have little plastic lenses, little cheap lomography plastic lenses, like 60 or 70 bucks for 3 of them. And they create kind of fun, funky, analog type effects. And I can put those on these cameras. There's lots of options out there. It's not just the Lumix gear. So that's a really cool advantage of this. And if you're traveling, you want different looks, you have these different lenses you can carry in your pockets. It's a pretty cool way to go. From that, we are going to jump on to street photography, which is going to be a nice roll from what I just talked about. Back to Julio.
Cool. That was very nice. You've done it before.
Once or twice.
Yeah. All right, let me switch over to street. You guys like to shoot street? It's a ton of fun, right? It's accessible. It's right there in your face, and I love it. For me, that's really where my heart is for photography. The commercial stuff greases the wheels, so to speak. I have a couple different ways that I shoot street. Sometimes I want to be in someone's space or in their face and be present with that individual. Other times I want to be a little more incognito and I want to kind of catch them naturally. You know, like sometimes you go to take a picture of somebody and they stop doing that thing that's so cool, and all of a sudden they're like, I'm ready. You know, like a corpse. You know, it's like, that really sucks. You know, it's like, that's me. So if I can shoot it at certain times, certain places, I need to just shoot it and be discreet and move on. So these images I actually shot with the GX7, and I didn't use the electronic viewfinder, and I didn't use a screen. I just held the camera down low. I like to use my thumb on the shutter release. These are light cameras. I'm not trying to like lift anything. It weighs like nothing. And I use the 12 to 35 lens, which we don't have. Essentially, it's a 24 to 72/8 equivalent. I shot wide, and as I just passed people on the street, I just clicked off in shutter in silent mode, and it makes no sound. So you're just walking and clicking. Real easy. It makes no sound. The camera is set to face detection autofocus, which works the majority of the time. And if you grab on the face, it'll focus right on the left or right eye, whichever is closest to the lens. And it does it in video as well, which is really cool. Sometimes I'll actually turn on the screen as a shutter button, and I can just kind of, it's like playing a video game. I just face, pow, pow, you know, and I'm getting the shots. So let me quickly go through some of these. I love square format. These are from RAW, but I used the pre-processing technique that Joseph was talking about to design my black and white JPEG in camera. And I use that as my prototype. So while I get it right most of the time, I don't get it right all the time. So in this case, I wanted a little more contrast, more grain, and I did that in post, but it was based off of the JPEG. These are shot in Chinatown in San Francisco. I thought that was cool, Jason in his photo lab. And just walking around, I'm shooting loose, and I'm happy to shoot loose, because what I'm going for is authenticity and honesty in this series. I'm not trying to get something that's clinical and perfect and super, super digital. I think there's a time and place for that, but sometimes there's a time and place to be loose and to be authentic with your images. So very cool. Like I'm maybe like her, I'm maybe like 3 feet away, but I'm like walking through other people past her and I'm snapping. That's amazing. If I were to say, hey, can I get your picture? It's not going to work. I'm not getting releases because it's in a public, and I'm not selling these images. I'm sharing these online, so I don't feel you have to have a release. You just got to go out and create and be spontaneous and go for something that's beautiful. Here we got a lot of crazy lens flare coming down. It's even down here. It's just super cool, and there's tons of detail. in these images. Now here's one. I'm not exactly in focus with his face, but I don't care because I'm not trying to see individual hairs on his face. I want to get his expression and I want to get him in his environment. And there's another shot which I thought was really cool. And there's another one. And it just goes on again. I didn't exactly get his face in focus, but that was not the point in this exercise. When shooting street, if you go out, you know, sometimes it's fun to be casual and you kind of get what you get, but it's often you're gambling with your work. You're not necessarily building skills. If you go out and you have an idea in mind, I'm going to go out today and I'm going to shoot the garbage that I find on my feet, which is actually kind of fun to do because you never know what you find, toys and cigarette butts and who knows what. And you just walk and by the end of the day you get a series of cool stuff that is at your feet. In this case I wanted to just kind of get random people in Chinatown and I wanted to have a series, and by the time lunch came I had a series of images that worked pretty well. And look at that guy, I mean geez. This guy is proud. He, at some point, was somebody of importance, or at least he feels that he's somebody. I mean, look at his stature. I mean, it really tells a story. And I think if I pointed my camera, I said, hey, can I take a picture that cane may have been used to defend himself? So, really, just honest images. And something that's cool about still photography is they're silent. And we start to look at them and kind of see wondering what she's looking at, what she's doing, and our mind wanders, and it's just fun. It's kind of like when I was a child looking at picture books. Now, I want to talk about this camera. This is the FZ1000. This is a very, very unlikely street camera, but it is one of my favorites. I shoot this mostly in 4K. It's got a 16 times optical zoom. It just goes and goes and goes. And I use this a lot on vacation because I can operate everything with one hand. And I do like wine, although I'm not having any now. But when I'm on vacation, I got a glass of the vino in my left hand, and I can operate this entirely with my right. And my next, some of my next photos, I'll show you exactly how that worked out, but quite well actually, because we have exactly autofocus, stabilize. P is for professional. These are intelligent cameras. You can trust that they're going to get it right for you. Once you design your looks on camera, like Joseph was talking about, having your contrast and color. So, seeing the still images in Chinatown is cool. It says one thing, but what about, I think like I mentioned earlier, what do your photos sound like? What does that sound like when you're in a very rich environment like Chinatown where there's sounds and there's things that are moving in the wind? Taking that media and blending that as hybrid photography with your stills tells a whole nother story. Now a couple tips, when you're shooting video, treat it just like your photographs. Okay, either use the red button on the back of the camera, or in this case it's on the top, or set it to your shutter release, and you can do either or. And just treat it like your still photos, because again, we're shooting, what, we're shooting 30 frames or 24 frames of 8 megapixel images per second, so it is a photograph. So treat it like that. Don't worry about your shutter speed or anything like that. Just shoot photos, just happens to be rolling as video. And it's easy to do because you have a live view of the camera. With microphones, these microphones on the camera, they're okay to capture an ambient sound. They're called omnidirectional. So it captures the same level of audio behind you, on the camera, or in front of you. The downside with that is you'll often pick up operational noise. If you're hitting the buttons, you know, you're going to pick up that sound. You may pick up the sound of the autofocusing. It can't be helped because it's on the camera. But what I do use these for is if I want to sample a sound in particular, maybe if I'm taking a nature walk and I want to hear the sound of some water flowing, I just record video. It doesn't matter what's in front of the lens. It matters where I'm pointing my mic. So I put the mic close to the source of the sound. And then later, what you can do is you can extract that very easily in QuickTime, and I'll show you how in a moment. Let me play this real quick, and I'll show you this little presentation. I think you'll dig it. This is a combination of some stills with the GX7 and some shots with the FZ1000. You see where I got my music from, right? No need to go to a stock site. I wanted something authentic. I wanted something that was real. I'm not trying to get a performance piece, something contrived in the studio. So I just took the FZ1000, I got a couple clips as you saw in the beginning, and then I saw these guys performing. I gave them 20 bucks because they are there to perform for us, and it's much cheaper to give them 20 bucks for their time than it is to work with models and licensing and all that crap. So I turned the camera on, program mode, I put a larger mic on called the shotgun mic. I don't have one on this, but it looks like a big fuzzy mic. It comes out about that big. It's obvious that, there's one right there, it's obvious that when you have a mic on this camera that you're going to be recording. That's okay. These are street performers. They're there to perform for you. Otherwise, they'd be performing in closed doors somewhere. So I give them a little bit of money, record for a few minutes. Now I'm getting photos inside the wrapper, right? 8.5 megapixels for every frame. I'm getting audio. And then together I'm getting a really cool video piece. All automatic, standing there, holding it like so, cradling it, hitting record, and then letting them do their thing. I'm not going like crazy movements. I'm not wearing the super chest piece with the handle and all that. And you know, I'm just keeping it really simple. When you want to start shooting video, just keep it simple. Let the stuff in front of the lens do the work, and just start rolling. Yes.
Do you handle it?
100%. Yeah. I carry tripod with me from time to time, but I tell you, the more stuff I got to think about to do, the less I'm going to shoot. So most of the time I'm carrying just a camera. Most of the time I'm carrying something like this, because this is pretty much everything that I need for the way I like to shoot. This is the LX100. I do use a tripod occasionally, but in an area like Chinatown where it's really busy and you start putting a tripod down, you know, then it's like people try to have to walk around and, you know, you can knock it. And I'd rather have an image that's a video that's a little bit, that drifts a little bit, than one that's on a tripod that may get knocked around. That said, if you do find me on Vimeo, you'll see this piece, which I won't show you here, but this is an amazing street portrait of an opera singer in Renaissance costume singing, and I shot that with the FZ1000, and then I handheld with the GH4 was on a tripod. And it's a really cool piece because you don't run into that every day, and showing just a still photo does not complete the story here. You got to use video. So quickly to go back, let's look at these together. Here's a series. I shot this in a few hours. Really loose, really basic, but there's a series of something that's completed. But I can go further and make books and do whatever I wanted with that if I decided that I wanted to do that. Okay, let me show you one more quick piece. This is what I shot on vacation. Again, another series. This is in Asheville, North Carolina. I love square, so I'm just going to remove that. Really, this is truly the series. Just some cool street art. It's there for you to photograph it. It's there for you to enjoy it, so enjoy it. And for these, I toned these in camera, but I finished them from my RAW. So my JPEGs were like the prototypes, and then I finished it in Lightroom. But real simple, just kind of like trying to document this scene for myself. Some abstract pieces, real basic. Now, the FZ1000, and actually all the Lumix cameras we have here, has a panorama mode built in. It's super cool. It's like an iPhone or any smartphone. You shoot, blah, 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 stitches it together, and you see it live on the screen because everything with these cameras is live. There's no guessing. But it is hard. Like, I love my stuff in the middle. I don't know if you noticed that. I love the box format and really the box perspective, but it's hard to get stuff like this in the center. And you know, so I try to avoid things like this. Like, you know, it just kills for me. It's like, oh God. You put a porta potty in the middle of the alley. I mean, you know, for real. So you just kind of crop that out. I'm going to show you one more presentation I did on the street, and I'll give you some more tips on how to shoot video. So, again, music was provided for me. I got some cool video, some stills, threw it together. I used Adobe Premiere or Final Cut 10, but if you want to kind of just get your feet wet into shooting or editing video, there's a fantastic app called ProShow Web. I believe it's free for the first 30 days. It actually is cloud-based, so if you can take this content, you can put it on your iPad while you're on vacation, connect to Wi-Fi, it'll upload it to the cloud, to that cloud service for you. It'll back up all your work, and then based on the music, it'll combine it into a presentation like what I showed you, send you a message, hey, your video's done, and now you have an edited video, and it works very well. I've actually done assignments using ProShow Web. You know, and what you do is you just got to spend a little time in the beginning setting up your flavor of how you like your cuts. You notice, like with my work, I don't do a lot of fades. It's usually a cut, maybe sometimes a pan. So it's very basic, and so you can put these formulas in, and it'll make it for you, and it works very well. It's iOS or web-based, and on a PC they have an actual full editing suite. One thing when you're shooting video on the street, you'll notice that people will cross in front of the camera. I like that. That pulls us into the scene. Sometimes you get people that try to duck and they're good, and sometimes they don't quite duck and they're kind of like a penguin across, and you just don't, you know. I just kind of edit that out, which is like right there, right? So someone was kind of doing a weird penguin thing, and I threw some stills over it. Real simple, not doing anything crazy. The other thing is, while you're recording in an area, like, again, this was with the FZ1000, recording in an area that's high traffic, people having a really good time because they're on vacation and drinking and maybe a little too much, they will come up to you and they will start talking to you, and that's okay. I carry business cards on me for that purpose without my information, just my website, so they can go and we can connect on social. So a couple things you can do is you can take a picture of them and Wi-Fi to your phone, email it to them if you choose, or just have a conversation with them and hand them that business card. That's another way to do it. But you have to, like, that video took me over an hour to shoot because this guy came up to me and he's like, hey, what are you doing? Like, while I was recording. What is that? Right to the microphone, like right into the microphone. That's a cool camera. You know, and you know, you're on the street and that's what happens. And so you just pause for a few minutes, you talk to them, and then you kind of move on, and it took about an hour, but I was patient. I really wanted to get this and complete this shot. So that is how I shoot my street. I'm going to move in to some low light and talk about how I do this. I love low light. You guys like low light? It's a ton of fun when the lights are on, especially when it's raining. It's a whole different world. We've seen this one. This is Joseph pulling this car out. Now, mind you, I let him do that because I'm not about to take a $100,000 car with that space. No. I'm going to let him do it, but I'm going to record it. Because there's one or two things that will happen.
Insurance purposes.
Yeah. Blackmail purposes in this case. But it worked out, you know. We're here. The car's in one piece. So you can see he's driving right now. I shot this in 4K, so you can see the different photos. We had one earlier with the red background. We have this as a photo. That was a close call. Actually, using a live view, I saw the car coming, so I was able to be smart about that. So I can actually open up the cog and go to, let's see, that's cool. And capture that frame, and I can maybe pull another one and then capture that frame. So I'm harvesting photos from video. There's one, and there's another. So now I have two cool images. I stylized this in the camera. I did this with the LX100. There's a filter button, and you have a variety of filters like presets in Lightroom, and it's a starting point. And so this is the super impressive art mode, something like that. It's super and impressive at the same time. So I think that's what is it? Impressive art, Joseph?
Yeah, that's it.
Impressive art.
Yeah.
So it's instant art, and it's impressive, and it does cool stuff like it makes the image kind of grainy, and it makes these crazy contrast images, and you can just use a slider in the back of the camera and instantly get this effect in black and white or color or somewhere in between. And I shot this in square format 4K video. Now this is one of the cool things that you can do with 4K photo that you can only do with Lumix cameras. So when you're shooting video, typically it's what, 16 by 9? That's cool, but not all the time. Maybe you want to change it up. So typically with most cameras you can do 16 by 9, but how do you get to this? Well, this is not necessarily a crop. See, when cameras record video, they're only using, the Lumix cameras are only using a certain portion of the sensor, the center portion. And so you have all the space above and below and on the sides. So 4K photo, you crop it on the sides, but then you expand the height. So you still get a 4K and 8 megapixel square image, as opposed to cropping off all that data and getting maybe like a 5 megapixel image. So you're still getting a lot of detail. If I made this 16 by 9, I would lose the tops and the bottoms, but I would see more information on the sides. And that works with all the different formats in 4K photo. I find that fascinating. Yes?
So you set that before you shoot the video? You set
Yeah.
that with the, okay.
Yeah, so on the LX100,
Aspect ratio.
yeah, so on the LX100, it's kind of hard to see in the dark. You have an aspect ratio selector on the top, and you could, you see that?
Oh, okay.
So
Yeah.
if we do 16 by 9, I think that was 16 by 9, but then you can switch it and see it live. There's no guessing. And it's really that easy. So you just set it to what you want and you shoot. And then if you want to do a different aspect ratio, you just change it up. But there's something else that they do, and this is not documented in the manual. And I think both of our Lumix, who else shoots Lumix besides them? Just them? You shooting it? Okay, so if you got a Lumix camera, I'm pretty certain most of them can do this. Long exposure video. And there's a certain way to get to it. This is really fresh. I'll show you this. So you're recording audio real time, but you're driving your shutter. And at night, it looks really cool. It's a cool effect. I mean, you can imagine the possibilities with this. And I'm shooting 4K square crop. So, of course, then from here I could find the exact frame I want. Like I said, I don't know if this is printed in the manual. I don't really read them, so I'm just assuming that it's not in the manual. Because when I started doing this and I talked to the engineers, they're like, wow, that's really cool. So it's probably not in the manual. Oh look, so we're starting to see that light source come out on the bottom of the screen. Cool, look at that, wow. So capture that. I got that one. I got a bunch down here, so here it is. And then from here I can go on and I can develop. Maybe I want to throw a vignette on. Oh, where is my vignette? There it is.
Is that specific to just a few?
That
feature on all of them?
The long exposure video.
Mm-hmm.
I think all these cameras here do it, and I think older cameras may do it.
Serious?
So here's how you get to it. Here's the big secret, the secret sauce. So on most of the cameras, there is a dedicated video mode. It's usually like an N, and it'll have like a little camera on it. Let's see. You have yours. I know you got it in there somewhere. And how about you? You may have it on there. So you have like the P and the camera mode. That may be it. You have to dig. I'm not sure if the models have it, but so that allows you to set your manual exposure for video. But it allows you to change your shutter, aperture, ISO. The problem is when you go to lower shutter speeds with video, in that particular mode, you can only go down to the 30th of a second. So you get a little bit of motion, not a lot. To engage the longer exposures, you go to manual focus. And now you can go down, I think, 2 seconds per frame of video, which is really neat. So what I usually do is focus first, and then turn it to manual focus. And then I'm recording long exposure video, and it's a ton of fun. A couple things, I want to show you this. If you're shooting stills at night, which I still do, I shoot JPEG and RAW. That is JPEG, and then that one that's kind of dull is RAW. So I designed this in camera. I'm happy with that. That's exactly what I wanted. It's not perfect, but that's what I wanted because I don't want to show the clouds. That's RAW. To me, this looks better than this. Now the RAW image you can do cool stuff with later, like Joseph is showing you. So you get the best of both worlds, but for my needs, that is the one I'm keeping, and that would be the one that I don't really care about. You can see the difference. And I'll show you one more clip. Long exposure at night. Get some really cool stuff, and you can capture this. I was really shooting this image for like this part. This I kind of left in. I really didn't care about the gas station. So I wanted to do something kind of abstract. And actually, well, you see, here's one of the results. This is just the bottom part.
It's cool.
Right? I just wanted something really kind of funky. Now, if I took this file, this video file and I brought it into After Effects or a specific video program, I can actually make that move, which would be really cool. But this was kind of like something I was thinking about for like a Facebook banner or something. All right, sir, you want to talk about macro?
We can do that.
Any questions on this? Yes.
When you're doing that night,
Mhm.
are you using a tripod?
Not all the time. So the last two videos I showed you, I did not. So the bus and the cars I handheld. Because the cameras are light, I just hold it steady, and the cameras, the LS100 has stabilization built in the lens. So it's not perfect. Like towards the beginning and the end of the recording, when you push the button, you're so small, you kind of, I'm exaggerating, but you kind of, you know, when you hit it, it's such a small camera. And I just don't use that part of the video. I just kind of use the sweet spot. And then I find things, sorry, I've been cutting you off. I find things like, this morning we were shooting by the I don't know, construction areas, and I just found thing stick out of the ground. I put the camera on that. Yes?
I wanted to ask, what is the video mic that you use?
I like the Rode Video Mic Pro a lot because it's got a built-in preamp, so it sends a really strong signal to the recording mechanism inside the camera. But Panasonic makes one called the MS2, Barry Smith. And that, when you add that mic onto your cameras, it'll actually engage a secret menu, which is fun. If it makes secret menus. And then, but basically what you can do is you can say, okay, focus the pickup of the microphone with my zoom lens. Or you can say, okay, even though I'm zoomed in, I want to record what I'm narrating on video. Or you can use it to record ambient sound. It's a very versatile mic. But I like MS2, yeah. But I like the richness of the Rode.
That's the Rode over there on top of the iPhone that's broadcasting.
And you can use it to connect to other cameras.
RHOD.
E, yeah. RHOD.
RGB.
It's Australia. It's different.
They just had to be different. All right, shall we move on to macro? All right. So macro, we're not going to look at a whole lot of pictures, but I want to talk specifically about one of the cool things about shooting macro with this type of gear. First off, there is currently one dedicated macro lens on the market by Lumix. This is this guy right here. It's a 45mm lens. Now something I don't think we've mentioned yet, whenever you look at a Lumix lens and you see the number on there, like this one's 45, the crop factor on these is 2 to 1, which means you double this to get to what you would expect out of a full frame 35mm camera, which means this 45 is actually a 90mm lens. So like earlier when I was talking about the 70 to 200 f2.8, that long lens that's on this, what you see on the camera is 35 to 100, double that 70 to 200. Anyway, so this macro lens is a 45, actually a 90, and there is a second Lumix macro lens that's about to hit the market. I just saw a prototype of it the other day. It is a 30mm macro, so that'll be a 60. So, which is going to be a bit more, I think, a bit more convenient for a lot of people. I know when I first got into macro shooting, I liked that 60, and the kind of 90 range felt a little bit too long. So, but you know, it just depends on what you're shooting. But you're going to have two options here very shortly. Anyway, one of the things we like to talk about with macro photography for these cameras goes back to that LCD again. Now, if you've ever shot macro, you know that shooting macro handheld is generally considered a bad idea, right? It's really hard to hold that camera steady enough because just the tiniest movements in your hand translate to a lot of movements of this tiny little thing you're trying to shoot. Especially if that tiny little thing is moving, because it's moving a little bit, you're moving a little bit, and before you know it, you got a whole lot of movement going on. But if you do have to shoot handheld, because let's face it, you're not always running around with the tripod setting up to shoot macro, there's one of the features on here, that flip out LCD again, that can help a lot with that. Because if you're shooting handheld and you're like this, if you just do this yourself, you realize you can't hold super steady. This is going to move around quite a bit no matter what you do. But if you get your arms down here and you can kind of brace your arms against your body and hold yourself in snug, you can hold the camera a lot more steady. Between that and the built-in optical stabilization that's on these cameras, you'll see it says OIS, optical image stabilization. The lens element is actually floating around inside of here with obviously a bunch of fancy computer controls to keep it stable. And when you turn that on, you see the movement that's in the camera just kind of go boop and lock on. It's incredible how stable it is. So if you combine the OIS with hand holding it nice and steady, you can get the camera really nice and solid. Now the only thing you really have to worry about moving is the subject itself. So if you've got a little flower bouncing around in the wind and you can get a really nice solid hold, just wait for that moment when the wind stops enough to hold still and you can get that picture. So just one of the little details about shooting macro with these cameras. Now Julia's going to show you some pictures that were shot with a surprising camera. They're shot with a surprising camera. These are not traditional macro photos, but they're close-ups of bugs, and that's close enough to macro for our work. So,
yeah, I mean, you know, there's no rules of photography anymore. When you have the #1 phone camera in the world sold is the iPhone, and the #1 dedicated camera in the world is the GoPro, and everything exciting about camera design is coming from non-traditional companies like Panasonic, even like Fuji and Olympus and Sony. Those are not traditional camera companies. So the rules, all bets are off, man. The thing is, it doesn't matter what you use. If you're creating and you're having fun, you're a better artist for it. So whether you're using this one, or in this case, I was using this big honker, it's good. At the end of the day, what matters is the images. Are you feeling self-expressed? If you're in business, are your profits growing? Are you working less? You know, that's the important stuff. So that's a huge reason why I shoot these. You know, if Fisher Price had a camera that did everything, and it was like a perfect camera, and had a little squeaky thing on it, I'd be rocking that all day long. Let me show you some of these images. I'm not a macro photographer. Yeah, exactly. I'm not a macro photographer, and I don't play one on TV, but I will show you some shots briefly, and then I'll show you how I made a couple. These are all pulled frames from the FZ1000 I shot in video. 4K.
From video.
Yeah, very sharp. Very sharp. Shallow depth of field. By the way, the folks online, the experts in the forums will say you can't get shallow depth of field with a small sensor camera. And then I'm like, well, what is that? Because it looks blurry to me. And by the way, the sensor on the FZ1000 is half the size of the GX, all the other cameras. They made that on purpose so you could have a large zoom without it being incredibly huge. And you can still get shallow depth of field. It's insane. But yeah, these are all from video. Crazy, huh?
Yeah.
I set the camera to vivid. I punched up the colors a little more, and in the camera, you can adjust your black levels and your highlights independently. So when I go to vivid, I like to lift the blacks up a little bit, especially when shooting butterflies or anything that has a lot of rich darks. So I'll play this back. Look at that. Bam. You know, you can't really tell the butterflies what to do like you can with the model. I don't speak their language, and I don't think they care. So you know, you're just going to shoot, and you're going to get what you get. That one's sharp. There we go. You can't tell, but trust me, it is. You know, I don't like bugs. They freak me out, man. That's another reason why I did not use a macro lens. So I shot this, I think it was the longest zoom, so it was really hand holding. And you could see in one of these videos, where it is, so there's the one I just shot. It's pretty sharp, man. That's pretty sharp. It's kind of creepy. So let's see, is it this one? You can see me moving around. Right, these are not like polished up demo videos. This is exactly what I shot. Pretty amazing what you can get. Here's one. Do you ever try to focus video with a DSLR? Anyone? It's right, isn't it? It drives you to tears. It drives you to tears.
Why
You
I'm
know?
here.
Yeah, right. So check this out. I think actually in this one. So butterfly moves. Now watch. What? Look at that. Did you see it? I'll show you again. Now mind you, this is the camera that I use with one hand, the FZ1000. So see that? It gets it in focus. Because the camera has a live view. It's a hybrid camera. It's half video, it's half photo. And as right now we're at 4K, so 4K 8 megapixels. But guess what? In a couple of years, we'll be at 6K. That's 19 megapixels per frame of video. And about 3 or 4 years later, we'll be at 8K, and that's 33 megapixels per frame of video. And those cameras are here in various forms, prototype or cinema cameras that cost tens of thousands of dollars. But eventually, that technology will end up in a camera like this. And probably at some point it'll end up in a phone. But yeah, we're focusing in video just like you would in stills. So let's play that again. Oh, look at that. I'm going to scrub. I'm going to find the exact shot that I want. See, it's losing. There we go. Right. So you can be technically casual, but be highly creative at the same time. This allows, like my wife loves to shoot. She's got a great eye, but she's not very technical. So when we share a lot of cameras, they have, let's see, actually this one. They have a dial on there that has a section called C1 and C2, and I think even your cameras may have that. That's a full custom setting for the entire camera. So she'll put all of her settings in like C1, and I put mine in C2. So she hands it to me, I switch it to C2, it's got everything set up exactly how I want it. Whether it's video, color, or autofocus, it's exactly how I want it. I hand it back to her, she puts it in C1, and it's exactly how she wants it. So that's a lot of fun. You can share cameras like that, real easy. The cameras that she does not like to use as much, like the GH4, it's too big for her, it's too man camera-ish. She uses, we share a lot, like the little tiny ones, because these are really fun, and the GX7s. So but with this one, I'll do color in C1, black and white in C2, and then C3 I'll do like a custom color. If I'm on a specific assignment, maybe I'm going to shoot like some guys in a band, I'll do crazy cross process, that kind of stuff. So I'm flipping back and forth, I'm shooting still in the video, and I'm Wi-Fiing into my phone, I'm delivering those JPEGs to the client. If they're happy with it, I'm done. If they're not, I got a RAW to work with, and of course I have video. Now, that was kind of a sidetrack there. Let me show you this last one. So, okay, well, geez, off the bat, that's good, right? So I captured that frame. We're going to play this. There's the audio, by the way.
And that you got off your Rhodes?
No, that was actually with just a normal microphone on the camera. Because it's again, that microphone is an omnidirectional. So I was out there by myself, and my wife and her father were farther down the path. So all I do is just not talk and hold the camera steady, not zoom, and let the microphone pick up everything.
What's
So
the lens on that?
that is actually this camera here. This is got an all-in-one lens. It's non-changeable. So this is a 16 times optical zoom. That means that when I was shooting the flower, and actually I shot that by accident, I was shooting the butterfly, I was quite far away because I don't like to be close to bugs. I just let it zoom in. But here's something that's interesting. So what do we have here? Right? We have a shot of the butterfly, but then the butterfly flies away. It's a cool video clip. And now I got a photo of a flower. So there's so many applications for this kind of shooting. So many applications. Now, if you want to extract that audio, if you have a Mac, and I'm sure you can do this on the PC. On the Mac, you just open the video in QuickTime, File, Export, Audio. And now you export an MP4, or excuse me, an MP3. Just like that. No special software. Just out it goes. Yes.
Is that QuickTime 7?
Yeah, I think so. Well, I don't know.
It's whatever version is in.
Yeah, whatever, 10. But you can do it in 7. It goes this goes way back. So yeah, if you got QuickTime, that's great. So now I can pull that audio out. Maybe I just want to put some still photos with that audio track, and have another presentation like the stuff I showed you before. Are we on to commercial now? I think so.
That's what we have slides for. Yes.
Yeah, so I'm kind of really intrigued with both the FC1000 and the LX100.
Mhm.
Is there any pros and cons outside of just focal length between them?
Not really.
Size?
Not really. I mean, it's okay. So if you want to set up your shot, I'll go over this real quick. So essentially, you just can't change lenses. If you're happy with the focal length you get, then there's really no drawback to it. I will say this. I mean, I have the portfolio of Lumix cameras, and they're a ton of fun. But even if they're small and I have to dig into my bag, I'm not shooting as much. I may miss the shot. With these cameras, I mean, this thing I practically put in my pocket. You know, and then this one's just got a massive lens, so it's a 16 times optical zoom. So 35 millimeter equivalent, 25 to 400. That's pretty much everything I'll ever want.
So which one's in your right hand?
FZ 1000.
That's the bigger one.
Alex 100. They're both, I think, about $900. They both share the same core functionality. This has got a brighter lens, so it's better for low light, better for street shooting. This has a longer lens. This is better for like a general purpose travel camera, actually sports camera as well. One thing I didn't talk about, I'll say this briefly, and I'm going to hand it over to you. They have leaf shutters in the lenses. Okay, what that allows you to do is you use a flash and synchronize it at any shutter speed. You can go outside in bright sun and shoot up to 4,000 of a second flash without having to use some crazy high-speed sync mode that's not a true high-speed sync. I mean, any shutter speed. You don't even have to like, you just turn on, I want to shoot at 4,000 of a second, I want to do this, and you want to do sports photography with a flash, pop it on and do that, and you can do it wirelessly. That was really cool. That was something we discovered by accident, just playing around. So this one's actually been very popular with like photographers that do like sports portraits for schools and that kind of thing. Because typically you have to have a really big setup to do that, and they've got one of those, flash on the top or flash with a cord, and they're just like pop, 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 shoot. So, sorry, go ahead.
No worries. Okay. Next up, talk about portraits. We've talked a lot about a lot of natural light photography, you know, travel or macro or street photography, and that's all just with existing light. So now we're going to move into studio type work. I'm going to start off with just a nice big pretty picture here, full screen, that was shot, there we go. This is in my studio. This is actually my wife. This is in my studio, and this is with Pro Photo lights. So the big bad boy lights. Pro Photos are your highest end brand, or one of the highest end brands for studio lighting. This is not the cheap stuff. This is the really good big stuff. Usually when you're thinking about Pro Photos, you're thinking really big, huge honking cameras. So why on earth would you be in a studio with these huge lights and an itty bitty little camera like this? Well, okay, even like this, there we go. That's what I would shoot with the GH4. It comes back to all the things we talked about before. It's the versatility, it's the fun, it's the ability to dial in the look in the camera. This black and white look, I dialed into the camera. Now this is a raw file that was processed later, but as Julia was talking about for his street photography, you get a general look, so you know what you want to go for in the camera, and then maybe I'll use that, maybe I won't, but I've got the option, but I can show the client what the image is going to look like even if you're in the studio. So I show this just to really highlight the fact that these aren't just for outdoor street shooting. If you do more traditional photography, if you're in the studio, you like working with big lights, you like working with wireless lights, these are triggered by radio triggers, excuse me, you have all of that capability in here just like you would with any other camera gear. So a couple of nice big pretty studio photos. And let's do this. So this is that's kind of the color is horrible in here. Trust me, she's really pretty. What this is a studio type portrait, but this is on location. We're out in some old abandoned barn. And the setup here is we're looking around for a cool shot. She's a local actress, needed a headshot. And we see the sunlight coming through the barn doors, and it looks really cool. And if I could just get her in the right spot, have the sunlight coming through, but you can't quite get everything laid out right. So, hey, you know what? I've got a strobe in my pocket. Well, it's in the bag. I got a little strobe. We make, gee, can you get out? Where's my bag? Is this?
Here.
Can you pull out the two little strobes? Or
I will,
Panasonic makes two small strobes. So you've got, same what you would expect to find from the other type of manufacturers. You've got a kind of medium, small, or small and large, however you want to look at it. You get two different size strobes here. The cool thing about these is they have all the wireless technology built into them. You can set up one of these lights on a light stand and control it from the GH4. You can set up a whole ton of these things and go on the back of the GH4 and say, light bank A, I want it lowered by half a stop.
Oh, cool.
Light bank B, bring it up 2/3. You can do all of that from the camera. So this shot, I couldn't quite get the sun go on the right spot, so take one of these lights, put it on a light stand, go outside the window, shine it through, and then from the other side, program the light to be as bright as you want it to be. Really, really cool stuff. You can do that all in camera. Next shot is getting away from big studio strobes. So I like the big lights, I like big studio lights, and moving to constant light for studio type work is a new thing for me. But I'm having a lot of fun doing it, and here's why. So this particular shot right here, this is done in, excuse me, this is a chef, he's the owner of the restaurant, this is his kitchen, I'm doing a portrait for him, and the light overhead is, you know, God knows what, tungsten, fluoresco, hideous stuff. But that's fine, you white balance for that and it all looks good. You can see the background lights, these halogen lights in the cooktop stove went super blue because of the white balance in the front. That's great, it actually worked out really well, nice little offset there. The problem with the shot was that there was no light down here, right? It's set up in these tiny little kitchen. I don't have room for big reflectors, and even, actually I tried that and it didn't work. There's just too much shadow underneath, so I need light coming from underneath. Well, the light color of this is gonna have to balance with what's coming down here. Now I could get my strobe and get out a handful of gels and go, is it a quarter CTO? No, it's a half CTO and a hint of blue, and what is it? And try and match it. Or I can use this, or something like this. This is an LED light. This is made by a company called Felix. I have the ability to change the brightness on it, and the color temperature.
Oh.
Ooh, this gets cool. So this goes from 3,000 degrees Kelvin to 5,600 degrees Kelvin. So basically tungsten to daylight. This ability to dial that in allows you so much more control. I can put this, and what I do is I put this kind of underneath his arms. Just imagine, it's totally washing up, but imagine it's down here. It's basically sitting on the table, and I'm shooting in here. I've got this down on the table. I'm looking through the viewfinder. Remember, it's all electronic. What I see is what I get, and I'm able to just dial the color temperature in to get it to match the overhead light. Once I've got it dialed in, fire it off, and away we go. Now this light is not cheap. I like expensive lights, apparently. The company Felix makes the best LED lights you're gonna find, but you're also gonna pay the most for them. This little guy right here is $500. There is a kit that we both like to carry that is a rolling box that has 4 lights and light stands, a little bit north of $3,000. Not cheap gear, but you get what you pay for. It's like buying ProPhoto versus some much cheaper light, but the difference is even greater in LEDs. The difference between quality LEDs, and neither one of us are sponsored or we're not paid by these guys. Both of our rolling kits, we paid our own money for them, but they're great, great gear that we absolutely swear by. The quality of it is second to none. So if you're gonna do constant LED lighting, that's the company to look at. Yeah.
Have you ever used ice lights?
I don't own one. I've played with them a little bit. There are, you've got one light bar, right? It's a cool thing, but it's kind of a one-trick pony. And I think it's great.
Yeah.
No, I'm not knocking it all. It's great. It is a very good quality
I
light.
don't have one. I'm just.
Yeah, no, it's a great light, but
I
that's
actually
all it
like that.
does. You've got that one bar. The lights that we have, and we didn't bring them up here with us because we didn't have as much space. They're more like little studio lights. They have barn doors and all kinds of modifiers. Put them on light stands. There's a battery pack for them that's about to come out, so you can put them, wherever you want. The bigger ones are sized the same as ProPhoto heads, so you can put ProPhoto modifiers on them, softboxes, beauty dishes, that sort of thing. So it's more a studio light. The ice light is a very specific tool. It's great, but it is not what these are.
Well, it costs the same too.
Yeah.
Yeah, the ice light's $500. I know that.
$500,
Yeah.
And that's fine. And what was the maker of that?
Felix, F-I-I-L-E-X.
Thank you.
And the ice light was designed for still photography, not necessarily for video. So
Right.
when I talk about my stuff, I'll tell you the difference.
There you
So
go.
I can use them extensively.
So you say you use ProPhoto strobes. What kind of like radio triggers do you use?
I'm using, they're just dumb triggers. They're a company called Photix makes them.
Okay.
They're no fancy TTL because my ProPhotos aren't TTL. It's all manual. So it's harder work. I gotta run around and dial the dials to make them change, but it works. And in the studio, that's fine. Okay, so this shot I have up here to highlight one of the advantages of big studio light. When you have a ton of light, you can shoot at f8, f11, still fully illuminate the scene. And when you're shooting at f8 or f11 or somewhere around there, you have a huge amount of depth of field, which is what you need for a shot like this. Multiple people, multiple depths, you need that big shallow depth of field. But sometimes you don't want that. Sometimes you want really shallow depth of field. And ironically, with studio strobes, that can be harder to get because there's so much light. Even with the ProPhotos dialed all the way down to the lowest settings, I still have to shoot it at maybe f5.6. Now if you're shooting on a medium format camera, big, huge sensor, at f5.6 you've got shallow depth of field. On a Sony or, on a Canon or Nikon shooting full frame, you're not going to get shallow depth of field until you get down to f4, so maybe a little bit lower than that. One of the downfalls of these smaller sensors, or what happens when you have a smaller sensor like you have in these, is you have to get to an even larger aperture before you get that really shallow depth of field. Now the sample photos that, the video that Julio had up with the bugs in them, that was shot at 400 millimeters, so you get the advantage of that really long length to get that shallow depth of field. But if you're shooting in the studio and you want shallow depth, you're looking at f2 or under, like f2.8, f2, maybe even a little bit lower, and you just can't do that with the studio strobes. So this is where the LEDs come back. This is a little portrait shot with a couple of the Felix lights, and as you can see in here, lovely, lovely shallow depth of field. I can't do that for a group portrait, but for an individual I can. That's shot at probably f1.2 or 1.4 on the really, really nice. Now we're getting into big studio toys. This is an 85 millimeter equivalent f1.2 Leica Nocticron lens. This is like an $1,800 lens, but it's really nice. It's really good. That's my studio portrait lens. Doing individual portraits, that's the lens I'm always going to go to. It is unbelievably sharp, as you can almost see here on the screen. We saw it right here, it's amazing. Incredible, incredible lens, but I can shoot it at f1.2 or f1.4 if I'm shooting with the Felix lights, if I'm shooting with the LED. This is just a 2-light setup, one on this side, one on the background, and that's it. All right, last setup here is, I'm going to start off with the thumbnails here and then I'll go bigger. So this is a pregnancy portrait, and the woman wanted to have a very specific look. She had something on Pinterest that she showed me. She wanted to have this black and white, backlit, rimlit kind of a thing. So again, I set up my Felix lights for this. I've got 2 lights, one coming from either side of her, backlighting her, and then a third one on the front, just to put a little kiss of light onto her skin there. Pure black background, set it up, shoot it, great, she loves it, that's what she wanted. But I'm looking at it going, I want something more, I need something else. Earlier last year, about a year and change ago, I shot a portrait of a ballerina in my studio. We covered her with talcum powder. She jumped up in the air. The powder went poof off of her, fired that, and caught it. Oh, so cool. If you ever do that, use somebody else's studio. I'm still cleaning the talcum powder out of little crevices in my place. But apparently I have a short-term memory problem because I decided to try this again with her. A little bit less dramatic though. First I just put a little powder in my hand, slap it, had her husband who was there fire the camera so I could see what it looks like. This is great. Okay, this is really cool. I like the way this looks, but now I've got a problem because I need powder on the front and the back, and there's only 3 of us. There's her and him and me. Not him, but her, him, and me, and that's it. So I've got 2 people clapping powder and a model and nobody else to push the button. Well, the cool thing about my iPhone's there, the cool thing about these cameras is they all have Wi-Fi. You can connect them all to your iPhone or Android or iPad or whatever, and control the camera from there, including taking the picture. So, what I did was I gave her the phone. Her arms are up out of the shot. So she's now got the iPhone in her hand, finger on the trigger. I say, when I count 3, 1, 2, 3, go, you push the button, you hold it. Her husband and I are on either sides of her, hands full of powder, 1, 2, 3, clap, get out of the way, she shoots the picture and off we go. So, here's the first shot. As you can see, his hands are still in the shot. I got mine out of the way, I don't know what he was doing. But his hands are still in the shot. Now she's holding down that button. This camera shoots 12 frames per second. That's fast. But you know what you can't do at 12 frames per second? Fire strobes. Right? You can't fire strobes at 12 frames a second. So there's shot number 1, 2, hands are out of the way, 3, both look great. Very quickly, the powder starts to go. So very quickly it's gone. So it's only in those first 2 shots, and really it's that first one where the hands are out, that's perfect. That's what I want. Could not do that with the strobes because it wouldn't recycle fast enough. I could have actually shot video. I'm not afraid of the red button, but I don't push it very often. But of course, this way I get a higher resolution. I do get that full 16 megapixel file, not the 8 megapixel, and I wanted to make sure that I could print this big for her. So, like really big. So, anyways, that's what you get. 12 frames a second. With the constant lighting, you can do that. Let's hand it back to you for the studio portrait, studio stuff that you're going to talk, or commercial stuff rather, that you're going to talk about. We're moving through portrait into commercial and studio. They're kind of all blended together, but I'll hand it back to you.
Yeah, in case you're curious, that's the Wi-Fi control. So here, tell you what, hold this and point it at somebody. And there we go, you're operating the camera. Don't operate the camera.
Oh, don't think I'm sorry.
When you operate the camera, I'll let you know. Okay, so now we'll do the video. Now,
It's only iOS apps.
Android as well. Yeah. So iOS or Android actually works a little better with Android for some reason. And if you have Android, you take the picture and you just touch it and it transfers. So it's a really cool feature. It works with video, works with still. Your iPad or your phone becomes a second monitor, which is a lot of fun. It's good for selfies. I like selfies. So. I want to talk briefly about my commercial work. I shoot mainly animated portraits for commercial work. I've not had an assignment where it was just stills in like 3 years, I think, maybe a little longer. Not that I'm not marketing that stuff, I'm just not being asked to shoot that. And I'm okay with that because this stuff I actually charge more. And because I'm doing the majority work in the camera, it's a lot easier. Because in the post-production, on most of these, there's maybe like 10 minutes for each image. When you're letting the camera do the heavy technical load for you, and you're focusing on the creative part, and you see what this looks like live, and you don't have to guess. And you can do things like set the camera up and hand the tablet to your client, they can see it live, and you get approval. Things become real easy, real fast. So this was actually for a client, Anheuser-Busch, for a brand of beer, and I went and shot some of this stuff in Guadalajara just before Christmas. This was for Anheuser-Busch, for this particular brand, Montejo. It's like their Corona, but they're sponsoring a world tour of a band called Maná. If you're familiar with Latin music, they're the biggest Latin band ever. And they wanted somebody that can do this, but they couldn't really find anybody. So I'm fortunate that I'm one of the few people that does this kind of work professionally. And that means it doesn't mean that you're getting a great looking image, because a lot of people make great looking images. It means that you're doing it consistently and you're doing it on demand, and you can kind of go with the flow, which is great because our studio had the most bizarre electrical system. So batteries and LEDs, when I use my Felix lights, makes a big difference. And actually, let me talk about that real quick, because I think you mentioned the ice light. So I've used, just to kind of jump around real quick, I used an ice light on a campaign for Midstone Hair because we wanted to animate the beauty of shine. Okay, so we had an assistant off camera. We use that lightsaber up and down. It works good at slow shutter speeds. The ice light does not work good at fast shutter speeds. It has a refresh rate. These are LEDs just like on a monitor. So they're refreshing and blinking on and off in rows, and you start shooting with faster shutter speeds with the ice light right around 2/50th of a second. You start to get scan lines. And you don't see that on these cameras because they have a small screen. So it's like shooting slides. When you get a slide back, wow, isn't that gorgeous? And you blow it up, you're like, oh, maybe not so much. It's like that with these small screens. So you got to be really careful with LED lights. The Westcott lights, they're good for color. The color is good. I'm not going to say the color's not good. The color's good. I've done a lot of work with them. But when I stopped using them because of the refresh rate issue. If I wanted to kind of freeze action with my video and pull frames, I couldn't do that because at 2/50th of a second, you start getting scan lines with all their LEDs. These I found I can shoot at any shutter speed. It doesn't matter what shutter speed, which is great. And I think it's mainly because this company that's based in Taiwan, in the Bay Area, they make everything in-house. They don't outsource any parts. It's all done in-house. We took a tour and the place was just insane. It was like all the testing equipment, all the fabrication, all the engineering, everything is done in-house. And so they have complete control over the entire manufacturing from start to finish. So no one else has their parts. It's all proprietary, which is cool. And price-wise, it's about the same as other high-quality LEDs. And the other thing that these don't have, and it's a good thing that other LEDs have, they don't have what's called a green spike in your color. So Profoto lights and Broncolor are fantastic strobes, but the other off-brand strobes, the lesser-known strobes, are also quite good. They may not be exactly as good as a Profoto, but they're fairly good. With LEDs, it's not like that. LEDs for lighting, for photography, is a new genre of lighting. They're nice because they don't heat up, they're low draw on power. You can light this with this little battery in here for a few hours. But because a lot of these companies are sourcing their parts from different places, some of the same components that are like designed to illuminate your garden at night are getting put in your photographic equipment. And so you often get what's called a green spike, which essentially means that skin tone becomes a little green. People start to look a little jaundiced. And again, because you're using a small camera that has a small screen, you can't really tell until you get it into your computer, and then you're like, God, now I got scan lines and they look like the freaking Hulk. And it just don't work. And I learned the hard way. So I pretty much use these exclusively. And the reason why the green spike is in there, the technical reason, is that you have over the entire spectrum of color, there's parts of the magenta spectrum that's just not present. And the opposite of the magenta is green. So you start to get a little green cast because we're just not seeing that data. And what's worse is because that data's not there, you can't really correct for it in post. Okay, so you're just kind of stuck with either greenish jaundice skin, or you have to really desaturate it, and then they just look really, there's no life in the images. And it really affects the images. So be careful on your LEDs. And one other thing, the light panels you see that are like grids of LEDs, you've probably seen them on news crews and stuff. Every one of those LEDs is essentially just a slightly newer version of the technology we had in the 70s when those like pre-Atari video games with the LEDs. It's the same type of thing. Every one of those LEDs is a light source, and that means that every light source also casts a shadow. So if you have 1,200 LEDs, you have 1,200 little grids of shadows. So if you're trying to get really critical detail from a light panel, you can diffuse it, which cuts your light source. But if you're not diffusing it and you photograph somebody, say, against a wall, and you got a gradation of shadow, it's like little grids when you look at it closely. All the green spike, the refresh rate, just does not work for a photographer. For a crew that's reporting on the news, that's okay, because that's here and gone in minutes. But for the photographic eye, you'll see it, and when you see it, you'll always see it, and it really it'll just kill your images. So real quick, let me go back to this. Here's some of the shots I did for Anheuser-Busch. You can see we got a loop, and I hid another loop. I don't know if you can see the band in the background on the projector. Loop within a loop. I'm shooting video. This is actually just a straight up animated portrait. Nothing's being masked out. It's all done in camera. Here's another one. This is a cinematograph. The difference is with the cinematograph, it's part still photo, part video. Okay, so I'm pulling one of those frames out like I've been showing all night. That's everything. And then I just mask out this part in post, and I let that video loop. And it becomes a living photograph. It's mesmerizing. For advertisers online, this is getting 400 to 500% more engagement. That's huge. That's huge. If you go to an advertising agency and you say, I get you 10%, they're like, oh, you're amazing. And you show them something like this, you get 400 to 500% more engagement online. That's gigantic. Here's another one. This one is a little more subtle. So very subtle. And again, because we're dealing with 8 megapixels for each frame of video, when I pulled out that frame, I can go on and do a little bit of work on the skin and do all use all my filters and whatnot in Photoshop, because it's a photograph, right? And then just this part is the video. And I don't need to retouch her hand. I'm not that crazy about retouching hands. So this is an image showcasing the beauty of the jewelry. Now what if you don't want to retouch video, right? Because video is 30 frames per second. There are plugins that will help you with that, but it can get crazy quick. Now of course she's like 19 years old, so she's got good skin to begin with, right? But here's a trick. You guys remember the Koken filters from the 80s, 70s, and 80s? They're like, okay, so keep them. These are filters that are made out of plastic, and they go in front of the lens. Pre-Photoshop, when we had to do everything in camera or it just really wasn't done. I used one of those filters for this. I softened the skin. And I also added the sparkle on the earrings. That was all done in camera. I saw it live. I didn't have to do any post-production to this shot, other than taking the master frame out, like I showed you, putting a little mask here, a little mask there, and I was done. The post-production on that was about 5 minutes. Once you get an understanding of really what video is, and you really start shooting it, then the rest of this is pretty straightforward. This is lit with the ice light, obviously.
I see an ice light.
Real basic, just hair. Here we're showcasing the beauty of fabric. Now this has a loop within a loop. So there's two things that are moving at different speeds. I don't know if you can see it. It's really subtle here. Loop 1, loop 2. So imagine a bride and groom on a beach for commercial purposes, or like often my wife and I, we like to take a walk by the water. I don't have hair, obviously, right, but she does. And so if I do have a tripod, I will set the camera up on a tripod. I'll use the Wi-Fi control, and I'll do short video of us standing and her hair is moving together. And then you can transfer that video if it's not 4K. You can't transfer 4K over Wi-Fi, it's just too big. But maybe a smaller video file to your phone, and you can do a lot of this stuff on your phone right there in the spot. Now here's another one. This was not shot in 4K, but it's still very effective. Now when you're showing us in Lightroom, we see this, and this is really what just kind of kills it. This tells us it's video, but online you don't see that. Online you just see the moving image. And when you don't see the play and a pause button, you don't realize it's video. It's a completely different effect. If you check out my website, you'll see all these live on the website. That's the client right there. It's not my idea. You know, I'm a pretty safe shooter when I'm shooting. This was shot off a fisheye, so it was about 2 feet away. Okay, and he wanted to light it, and if you watch carefully, you can see the flames. It kind of gets closer, and you do not want that flame to get to that camera. So it was maybe like a 3-second take, and I shot it in slow motion. That was built into the camera. And we've seen that one, and then here's another one. You have to tell me if you can spot the loops. Oops, I can't show it on Lightroom because it doesn't work right. Let's do this. There we go. Loop it. So there's about 4 loops. Okay, so do you see them?
I see 3, yeah.
Oh,
Face, 2 different lights.
okay. Good. And you have a little fabric down there moving too. And if it was a higher resolution
Yeah.
screen, you'd see a very subtle movement
I see that one.
over there.
That
Okay.
is-
So we have here, there.
Her
Fabric.
heart just blinked.
Yep, her eyes. Well, and again, it's somewhat over there. It's easier to see online. Or if I were to turn the screen around and see it, but
This is
it is. This
What?
is yeah.
I
What,
know
what do you
it's
edit these in?
I use either Creative Cloud or an app called Flixel. It's like Pixel but with an F. It's iOS and OS 10 only. That makes this work a lot easier. Flixel, I either finish my work in Flixel or I use it in part of my workflow with almost all these images.
What's it called again?
It's called Flixel, like Pixel but with an F. And if you get the app, you'll see my face in there because I made their training video for them. I developed a lot of these techniques. The shine was mine. A lot of the loops within loops. I developed these techniques a long time ago when I was slow. Remember I talked about I was shooting video, and it was before there was a market for this. So now that there's a market for this, it's a great time to get into this type of work if you're going to do it commercially. But even for fun, it's a ton of fun. Anybody got any questions on this? Cool. Joseph, you got anything else? Yes, sorry, go ahead. Yes.
Oh, I was just gonna ask that, when you're saying that you're using a mask of just having that piece of the loop, that's what you're doing, Carbon and Pixel?
Yeah, so it makes the process a lot easier because it has a live mask. So yeah, so just like with live view in a camera, it makes your exposure and all that much easier. Seeing it live, so you see a still photo, as you paint, the video is revealed underneath. So you start to just kind of get your mask, and then there's another tool that allows you to kind of trim the edges and kind of ping pong back and forth. There's like 4 tools, but it takes the workflow and makes it real easy. And if you're using what's fun, if you use a camera like this that shoots high quality HD video, you can Wi-Fi to your phone, and you can do it all on your phone.
Okay, last quick little bit here. Just want to talk about sports very quickly.
Sports.
Action or high-speed action or sports is definitely one of the areas where the mirrorless cameras, and not just Lumix, but all mirrorless cameras, get criticized as not being as good as mirrored cameras. Generally, that's because what you're looking at through the lens is not a live interpretation. It's not a live view of the actual thing you're seeing, right? It's going through electrons. You're seeing a screen and so on. So there's we're like maybe a microsecond delay or something in there, but it's not through the glass. Also, they've been criticized for being slow at focusing. Well, a lot of that, I'm happy to say, is either going away or gone. These cameras are almost as good. I'm not going to stand up here and say they're just as good as a dedicated Nikon or Canon camera at shooting sports. If sports is what you do exclusively, then you're probably still better off with those other cameras. But if it's something you do every once in a while, or something you do occasionally, or you just enjoy having fun with, then these cameras are more than capable of doing it. There's two things about it that make it really, really good. One of them is the focus tracking. Now, unlike a traditional SLR where you're looking through the lens, you have maybe kind of overlays on the screen. You can move around to show red where it's going to focus track on, but it's fixed to that area. What happens in these is you have a focus tracker that is like a fighter jet tracking a target. You will lock onto a subject, and the computer and the camera will do its best to hold onto that subject as it moves throughout the scene. It's not 100% perfect. Things go out of frame. It may lose it, but sometimes they come back in and it'll grab it again. That's crazy to see when that happens. But if you can keep it in frame, that subject will, for the most part, stay in focus incredibly well. You see the little target bouncing around on the object moving around the screen, whether it's your kids running around or a race car or whatever it is. It's pretty impressive when it happens. The other thing that makes these really, really good for sports is this 30 frame per second capability. I'm not talking about 30 frame per second stills, I'm talking about video, right? 4K video, what Julia's been talking about this whole time. If you're shooting 4K video, you are shooting 30 frames per second at 8 megapixels. So if you're shooting something like race cars here, you know, to be able to pull out that one frame, if you've ever shot sports or something really high speed, and you've looked at your 6 or 8 or 10 frame per second sequence and thought, oh, but like there and then there, I needed that shot right in between, that would have been perfect. Here you're more likely to get that 30 times per second instead of just 6 or 8 or 10 or whatever it is, or even 12 with these cameras. So you do have that capability. It's there. So that's one of the other things that makes sports awesome for these cameras. So again, not always the best tool for the job, but in some ways it's an even better tool for the job. Just depends on what you're doing. This is a still frame pulled out of a 4K video feed. Now granted, this, because it's, you know, the car's coming around the corner, it's not like if this had been one frame before or after, it would have been a lost shot. Either way, it would have been just fine with it. But this is out in full sun. It's shooting at a very high shutter speed. The car is perfectly sharp. I know, again, you can't really see that on here, but the only real motion blur you have in here is a little bit on the tire spinning, and that's what we want. We want to see a little bit of blur, otherwise these could just be parked cars staged out there. So you get that little bit of blur, but it's super sharp on all the decals and everything that matters, and it looks great. So that's one image I wanted to show there. And that,
Cool.
you can show the
Let me show one more.
bike thing? Okay.
You wanted to, yeah, you brought up sports, now we. Wait, I always forget sports. I'm not a sports photographer, but I'll show you one that I shot. Real easy, right? We're on the we're by the Bay, what is it, the Golden Gate Bridge. He's coming by his bike, and I just happened to be, because it's so small, I usually wear this around my wrist, you know, and so I hear him whizzing down, you know, I'm doing something else, and I just grab this, use my thumb on the shutter, I'm in 4K photo mode already, and he comes and it's going to do this, it's like a video game. And then, of course, you can pull the frame you want. Ooh, too fast. Let's go back a few. And I prefer to do this in camera because it's just so much faster. If you're on the go, then you just Wi-Fi to yourself. You get the metadata, you get everything you need, capture frame. I think I've done that a few times already. There is. Yeah, it was pretty crazy, huh? It even looks better not on the projector. But seriously though, I mean, this is amazing. And we're just at the beginning of this technology. It's one of those things that it's like when smartphones came to the market, a lot of companies said, oh, no one's gonna want to buy an iPhone. Now it's a billion of them alone, just iPhones. We're at 4K now. We're not gonna all of a sudden start to go back. It's just they want us to buy more stuff. They're gonna make it cooler. So don't be afraid of shooting video. If it doesn't come out right the first time, give it a shot. Eventually you'll start to click and you'll really start to dig it. It's not the right tool for everything, but it works for a lot of things. Let's raise lights.
Raise the lights.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Let's do these giveaways real quick, and then we get a few minutes for questions. These are random things we got at Think Tank. We were hanging out there, so we'd rather just give them away.
What is this?
I don't know.
It'll hold like a.
It's a whatever you want it to be.
It's a little mini wallet-y thing. I really don't know. We
Yeah.
honestly haven't figured it out. You can put a business card in there.
Card, and I don't know what the inside's for.
Your bus pass, maybe.
Maybe.
Metro card.
I guess if you want to make sure your wallet matches your pink bag. I think this is for cables and stuff.
Yeah, that's cool.
So, see what's going on. All right, so number between 1 and 14.
There we go. 6.
Number between 1 and 14.
11.
One more.
2.
Okay, so what I did is I numbered the list randomly, and then straight through. So we'll do the straight through first. Where are those numbers go? Number 6 is Vulcan. Where's this one? Vulcan. And number 11.
It's probably a good idea when you give away the camera. Huh?
Jim Houston. Oh, he's done something different. And number 2 on the that's Susan. All right. Oh, thank you very much.
Not much
you guys
exciting giveaways, sorry, but they were.
Yeah. You have any questions while you're checking out?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we'll be here for packing
yeah,
stuff
come on
up.
up. You want to see this stuff while we're putting it away? We have to head down and turn that car back in. So
Are the specs on the same on all of them? in
Warrant goes
terms
out
of
at 10, I think.
they're
60 megapixels?
yeah, they're more or less the same. I think the image quality between all the cameras, you're kind of splitting hairs.
What about the ISO?
Higher than you would ever use. It's like 50 or 25,000 or
Okay,
something.
well, yeah, I'm looking at all the cameras
Yeah.
and going away from the 5 series, which is what
Mhm.
I have. But I mean, and this knocks my socks off. But the 2 things that I care about most is that low light
Okay.
and the autofocus on,
So those are the 2 things that are hardest to get right now with smaller sensors, because no matter what, the bigger the sensor, the more information it's going to gather. Okay, and then you get more spin, and the easier it is to get shallow depth of field. Okay, so of all these cameras, the GH4 is going to be your best bet. This is going to give you the closest in image quality to a 5D Mark II or 5D Mark III.
which I have.
Okay, the shallow depth of field, you just want to use like an f1.2 lens, but you can also use f.95 lenses on these. There's a variety of companies that make them. They're manual focus only, and you can't get a lens that bright really on anything else. And with a lens that's f.95, if you focus on the eyelash is blurred.
Right.
So if that's not blurry enough for you, just shoot everything on infinity. And
No, really, I just throw a soft filter
yeah, for real.
over it.
So there's different ways to achieve the similar results. Some things are easier with a larger sensor, some things are not. My suggestion to you, what I did is I actually got my first Micro Four Thirds camera, and I kept it with my 5D. And after a while, I didn't touch my 5D for like 6 months. At that point, I knew it was time for me to just not keep it. So you never just want to jump ship. You may want to get with some friends and rent a camera for a week and really play with it and see how you like it. Go out, shoot the same stuff. Keep in mind that the buttons on here are not going to be the same as the Canon.
Oh, I know.
So you're going to be fumbling around, but yeah, there's a learning curve.
There's most of the stuff lasers rents. So
Yeah.
if you're not aware, one of the things about lasers, you pick them up on
That is a
late
GM5.
Friday afternoon, you operate here until Monday.
And
So
they
you
This is
get it
the
for
electrical
1 day, you know, 3 days for one. So that's a good way to try experiment with some of this stuff. Do it for a few weekends.
No,
see
so we
what
want
you like.
It doesn't have a touch screen. It doesn't have a tilt screen.
Yeah,
Thank you. That was great.
Models and Austin.
Did you?
Oh, from time to time.
Have you ever created live?
Pardon?
No, not yet. You probably will. I'll feel like I'm there.
Okay.
Working with several photographers in town, but
Guys, you got light over you. Push back away too much.
Okay.
There's someone out right there.
Very cool.
It's its own battery. Does it have battery?
I think all I have left are my cards I carry when I shoot street that don't have an actual email address.
Yeah,
But she can email me through either
I'll
website.
contact her, you know.
No.
She She needs to leave Austin. Yeah. Okay.
Pretty good.
The model number is
Right, but that's peak.
says defines that. This
The
is
time
That's
to
peak
yeah,
time,
peak
right?
time.
She knows
She's
it.
gotta
It looks like-
yeah.
looks like-
Austin's a great place to be based out. A friend of mine, that it's not a great place to like start your
How
career.
far away
A friend of mine, she's in her 40s and
This
she's
is
a
not
lifestyle
gonna be
model.
primary
Full travels the
major
world,
lasers. This is
but
a
she
nice
spent
little
decades in New
right.
York building
The
the.
the big
I
ones
mean,
are
she's gonna
modified.
be leaving town.
Exactly. This is
I'll give her a name.
Yeah, for sure.
right, right.
Yeah, I think that'd be great.
This is a little
Finding good talent in Austin is really tricky.
Actually,
It's very natural.
you don't even need that. This focuses away.
Yeah.
Okay.
You see broader focus, not massively, but it focuses. You know. But this
Yeah,
one, then
yeah,
you get the
that's great.
modifier. and this other
Thank you so
guy.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Okay.
It comes with a looks like this. You take one of those. It comes with one of these. You can bullshit on top of your camera. So
Okay.
that makes a good simple video light or
Okay.
kick light. You've got it lights up just a little hotspot
Oh,
on the
cool.
eye. It's good for the eye.
And the big ones are how big? Like, to the size of a road bed, basically?
Oh, no. The diameter of it is the size of a photo, but the actual light, the smaller one, the 180,
Okay.
is about that big around, about that big. So it's maybe the.
Yeah, I mean, that would be something that you would,
360 is
you or
probably
somebody that's
twice
in
that
the
volume.
organization would
Bigger one
email
around
me,
the size of a photo.
an idea of like, this is what we think, and here's our audience,
And then
professionals,
there's
or amateurs, or
500
whatever it is.
Right.
I send that to
Quite
Panasonic,
But
and
those
then
lights we
Panasonic
learned
says,
that
we'll
real
sponsor it, we
orange
won't.
with them.
If they do,
So
then
they're
my
500
fees are
right now,
covered,
so
if
say
not,
it's
then
supposed
the fees have to be
closest
paid somewhere
competition
else.
to that is almost twice as much. There's, what they've done is.
Yeah, I mean, I was just at Imaging USA a few weeks ago.
Julie was saying.
I was at Imaging
they
USA,
control the entire pipeline.
so I was there. So Panasonic is involved pretty heavy.
And we probably
Haven't
have
decided
no
anything
one
else.
that is using
Much
it
else.
that I know of.
It's fun.
We do have two series of
It is, and
Panasonic.
like I said, for me, it's taken me some getting used to. It's a different way of thinking for me.
But
But the more I do
think
it,
that
the
we
more I'm
want
seeing the
raw and more
possibilities of it.
people,
I like it when I've
especially
done it,
wedding
'cause I mean,
photographers
Sure.
going in
I've
this
been
direction.
struggling.
But that wouldn't matter from a, this is how,
But
you
you're
know,
trying to
best
teach
way to
Sure.
use your video.
Well, yeah, I'll give you.
Most of our shooters you can in my phone, obviously, because they're portrait.
Sure, so I'll give you one of these. Again, unfortunately, it doesn't have my info on it, but you can reach out through the website, the form. And, I'll put you guys in touch directly with Panasonic. I'll forward it. And then if I'm not able to, schedule-wise or creatively or whatever, there's 12 people on the team. Some are wedding photographers. And some are really active
I've
in
got
PAC.
20 by 30 prints that I made that look beautiful. I printed.
We got lots of speakers who can just talk about why
I
you're not
printed
into it.
bigger than that
Having
myself.
something to say.
I know that
You know,
we're
he's
pro photo that
comfortably
40 by
knows.
60.
You're just great,
That's
folks,
fine.
and this and
But I
that.
Right, right.
And we talk about the existing camera, when we're all going, what does that mean?
Mhm.
You know, and that's what
Okay.
is that this is designed by engineering.
Got it.
And so, yeah, you
Exactly.
really
Exactly. I did
Yeah.
a series
Most of us are
of
all,
prints that are
you know, seasoned photographers, so
60.
videos standard to us.
Well, the thing about prints, I love prints. Some prints are in my heart, but signing prints is generational. Seniors and young couples, they want their stuff on Facebook.
Yeah.
That's the world we live in.
shot on medium
Yeah,
format.
on Instagram.
Alright.
Well,
and then
and
further
I
scale up
have to, and I know I have
texture
to.
to hide the imperfections. These prints, the files are
I'm gonna go out and do it.
the
But
prints you can get this version.
I now need to get equipment.
Yep.
But those were,
Not doing very well.
no one looks at it right then. This is an art.
I mean, I know, doing partners, I think it's expensive to do it.
But they're gorgeous prints.
And I don't do
Those
anything
are
in
like you
camera,
said.
so it's all.
Right.
Yeah.
So if you spend a lot, good. If you spend a lot of time in post production, you're not able to build that out.
And I take it forever.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's no fun. I don't
Yeah.
like it.
Would you say
But I love the
generally
idea.
tries
So
Sure,
it's
sure.
a way to do it.
Same thing.
It is a lot easier. It is a lot easier.
Yeah.
Great.
That's the
Great.
resolution.
Thank you so much. My pleasure.
Sure.
Okay, nice to meet you.
Having super high resolution, medium format,
Okay.
sizes. Other than,
Okay.
there are other density medium formats. The shot
Sure.
reveal that you get a larger
They
opportunity
won't do something and say right away.
Most likely Panasonic will find somebody. There's 12, like I said, there's 12 people. Yeah, and I'm booked in April to do a lot of stuff on the East Coast. So if I'm not available, I'd love to come back. I love the area, the people here. So if I can't come back, we have wedding photographers, portrait photographers that all do this kind of
eyelash
stuff.
level
Okay,
on a portrait
excellent.
and do
Thank you
It's a
very
pleasure.
much.
Manual mode, this is shutter, where's that?
Here, I'll show you. Check it out. So your manual mode,
Yeah.
shutter,
Shutter,
push it
yeah.
in,
for that
push
really
it
high
in.
level retoucher,
Yep.
you're zooming into that.
Oh.
There you go.
It's not that hard, just know where it is.
That's it.
But
That's it.
most people don't
Okay.
Cool,
I
huh?
haven't used it for a while.
Okay,
so
sure.
I got it when I wanted the optical zoom, and then I got my Canon and
Well,
stuff.
Yeah.
I know the stitching thing. It's really cool.
I'm excited for the next one.
Yeah, that is
There you go.
I bought this literally on
Sometimes the
And
trickiest things have the
like
simplest
I
solutions.
had to send it back.
Yeah.
I got a refurbished
Oh,
one.
thank you.
And I had to send
Pleasure.
it back because the shutter was sticking. Like I shot 4 frames and then the shutter was
Maybe
sticking
what they
closed.
used to,
Over
I
at
thought
the
I've seen you
bottom of
already,
the
because I
free
watched
up.
Creative Live,
but-
maybe
Okay.
also YouTube.
Yeah, I'm not on Creative Live,
Yeah,
but I'm
they're
all over
great.
YouTube.
And I'm shooting with
Okay.
Legacy.
Definitely.
filter class.
Oh, okay.
So,
Right.
I've got a 35.
You wanna do Creative Live?
which
At
is
some point I probably will,
Have you
yeah.
talked to them yet?
It's got
A little bit, yeah.
That's what it focuses.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
I'm gonna be there next week.
Oh,
If you're
cool.
interested, I can talk to them.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to suggest me, that's
Yeah,
fine,
no, one step
for
at a
sure.
time.
Yeah.
Those are great cameras.
We were at
Absolutely.
lynda.com
My
earlier in the
first
week.
Micro Four Thirty.
What?
We were at lynda.com
Oh,
earlier
cool.
in the week, yeah. So Joseph's got classes out there already.
I was
So I may do something there.
Yes. Are these his or you keep these out when you're traveling?
What's that?
Are these his or you keep these out when
Those
you're
are
traveling?
his, and this one is an engineering sample, we're probably be getting us an engineering sample. So we'll probably be returning that one.
You were at Kevin last night?
Yes.
Yes. So 2 questions.
Hey, I just wanted to say thank you guys.
My pleasure. Thank you.
I learned a lot. I
Oh, good.
appreciate you guys taking such enthusiasm.
It's a lot of fun. Cool.
I had
Photography is a totally different world, man. When I started shooting in the 90s, it was a world of secrets. No one would tell you anything.
Yeah.
And then digital came along and just like pimp slapped everybody. And like all these like old school dudes, all of a sudden my best friend, because I knew Photoshop, but I knew it well.
Okay.
This weekend.
You know, so
So,
I was able to find the right mentor that was open-minded.
Yeah. that
Right,
would be
and they were the
great.
first ones to get into digital, and the rest of them that fought it, just most of them went out of business, complaining, and it's happening again with where we're at now. We're shooting for screens. That's it, man.
That's okay,
You know,
that's
I
okay.
love prints. I still shoot
Well,
film,
I
but I don't
still
shoot it
can't
professionally.
hardly do these, but
Because that's generational. Grandma wants prints.
as people
Maybe a
were
couple
still
very,
did,
very, very niche young people want prints, but everybody else for work,
I mean,
it ends up on a film.
this is my
So when you
first
deliver
gig.
your
This is how I
photographs,
spent my
I was curious what format you deliver to.
Usually an MP4. If they just, if a license is just to embed online, I give them an iframe code. They embed it wherever they want. That way the control stays in my hand. When it's time to relicense, if they don't come to an agreement, I just turn off
You want to capture?
the iframe code and it
They
goes
won't
away.
live stream off of YouTube.
What
Yeah.
web hosting service?
Oh,
Flicks it.
They have cable connected,
Yep.
obviously.
They host it as well.
live stream to
So
YouTube.
there's different hosting plans. You can do posting
The
plans
best way to
where
do that is to have
your
a camera
logo
that
will
has
appear
Ustream
everywhere
functionality.
except for your own portfolio site.
Yeah.
So it's on your portfolio site, it's nice and
There's
clean. The
one
moment
that's
that somebody
dedicated
shares
to
it,
camera, not
your
the
logo
prototype
goes on
cameras
there.
that they
And then when you
offer.
click on it, it
It's
goes
brand
back
new
to your
and
site.
that's in the
So you don't
box.
get into a cloud.
We've got a prototype of it.
Unless I do if it's going to be used for, say, on their Facebook site,
4K action camera.
because Facebook has to have a video file for Instagram. But then you can down-res it. They don't need 4K.
I think
They need a 720p
They're all pretty
file.
cool.
Yeah.
These guys,
Well, that's very
I would like to make something.
I want to get into some of that
I think
cinematograph
it's
stuff.
getting
It's
into it.
fascinating.
It's fun. Once you start doing it, it's not that hard.
Sure.
Keep it simple though. Some people like
If they have
they try to do
something
such
to
crazy
recommend.
motion,
Gotcha.
and then it becomes a video
Yeah,
portrait.
now with it built into it, like you said.
So your
you,
idea is that just to
connect
have
that.
subtle motion with the photograph.
So when you export that file to loop, what do you export?
Well, if I'm looping it, so you send it to give people an iframe. If Flixel's hosting it, it just uploads it on its own. It's usually probably an MP4. No matter what video you upload, it always ends up as an MP4 online. Just like no matter what kind of photo you capture, it always ends up as a JPEG. What's that?
The player would loop it.
Yeah. So their player's an iframe and a loops.
Okay.
Yeah. Doesn't show any play or pause buttons. Vimeo can do it as well, but the player's heavy. The player's fairly heavy, and then when you mouse over, even if you hide all the controls, as soon as you mouse over, you see the pause button. and that pops the bubble.
Well, we have this. So
Yeah, now they are working on something
almost this size,
that's
not
cool,
this
but it's,
big.
I don't know when it'll be out
Big,
yet,
right.
but they're
Or they
working
were
on
really
having
tiny
animated
because
poster frames for movies.
People are gonna start shooting.
Which would be
Oh,
really
cool.
sweet. So then you have your
And
poster
even the
frame with
big
your
thing,
type.
back guys,
Maybe
they
it's a
were like,
cinematograph and it's like it's just moving.
Yeah.
And then you click play and it
Too
goes
small.
into the video with the audio.
There are people that are gonna shoot mirrorless that actually.
Well, a
wanna
GIF
carry
is a
someone
delivery
else's
format.
character.
So the GIF is
Well, that bag you
256
showed
colors
On the slide.
versus a
Oh,
video.
the
Yeah, whereas a video is like millions of colors.
One of the think tank,
So
one of the
then
newest think tank.
GIF is
bags.
good for
It
email
is designed to
campaigns
carry quite a lot.
because you can't embed a video. So it's great for email campaigns. It's great if you just want to message it to somebody. I do them all the time. Like my cat, I got one on my phone. My cat, he's like, I'll show you. He's like being all silly, but the moment you put that into a high-res screen, it's like
Sure, but
Yeah,
it's
it's
not
like,
designed for
It's not designed for, but it works.
It's like
You don't put
Mario
access
or
here,
something,
just like
so-
the mirrorless.
I sent that to my wife.
I don't know. One of those designed for the mirrorless.
Yeah, it's really silly.
It was bigger.
Yeah. I could do that.
Really silly.
Anyway.
But I want to use a GIF as a
Well, yeah,
as a
check out
final
their new-
format.
their new bag
Unless
is
it's
really
part of-
designed for mirrorless. It's quite
Part of
impressive.
the thing.
And is it usually that they request a particular
Well, usually it's they'll say, well, we want an animated GIF when they really mean we just want an animated photograph. So then we talk about, okay, where are we showing this? What's the license? It's going to be on digital billboards, or it's going to be on Facebook, or whatever. And then we determine